Morning, Chair. I'm just making sure all of our folks are here.
Yeah, I see we've got Nate. Is the superintendent joining us this morning?
Yes, she is, and I think she just, I thought I just saw her. It's hard with the presentation up because I just was with her, so she should be jumping on in a sec. I'll find out.
Okay, I think otherwise, just seeing if everybody who's on your guys' list has come in.
Let me just go run down there.
We have two people on the attendees list, or one person, Regine Martin, who should be let in. She's sharing her screen.
Sure. And what about Lynn and Bernadette? Are they part of your team?
Not on my end.
That's public testimony, Counselor.
Great, thank you so much, Shane.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Ed.
All right. Superintendent should be on in 1 sec.
Morning, everyone. Nice to see some of your faces.
Morning, Anissa.
Good morning.
Good morning, Anissa.
Realizing I can't really, this is like, it's not a good position now that it's gotten so sunny.
I could send Astro over to see you.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
He's gotten so big. And I'm sitting on a bench, so he likes to come hang out. He's actually he's looking for my breakfast that I've got hiding behind my computer.
I think we have everybody now.
Okay, great. I've been chastised for being so shrouded in darkness, so I'm gonna take 1 second to see if I can organize my monitors. That doesn't happen. Carrie, that's better, right?
Definitely, Madam Chair, much better.
Okay, all right, we'll go with that for now. And we're all set, Carrie?
Absolutely.
All right, then I think we will get going. I'm calling this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee to order. For the record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor and also the Chair of the Council's Ways and Means Committee. This hearing is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and also broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. It's part of the Council's budget review process, which encompasses about 35 hearings and working sessions. Almost a third of those has something to do with BPS, which is about a third of our budget. The council takes very seriously its role in scrutinizing the budget and supporting all of our departments across the city. We'd love to have you testify at a hearing like this. So if you're interested, you can go to boston.gov/council-budget to see the schedule for all of the hearings and find out how to testify. You can also find that at boston.gov/budget-testify. There's a way to upload a 2-minute video of yourself. You can submit written testimony to ccc.wm@boston.gov. Or you can come sign up and join us in the Zoom and testify at the end of one of these hearings. We'll also have 2 dedicated public testimony hearings. So if evenings are more convenient for you, you can come on May 25th at 6 p.m. That'll be focused on BPS, or June 3rd at 6 p.m. focused on all other departments. Those ones will jump straight into public testimony. So we hope you'll join us. You can also tweet at us informally about the budget at #BossBudget, that's BOS budget. So today's hearing is on docket 0524 to 0526, orders for the FY22 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations for the school department and for other post-employment benefits. Docket 0527 to 0528, orders for capital fund transfer appropriations, and docket 0529 to 0531, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. But the focus of today is actually BPS, and specifically Commitment 2 and their strategic plan, Accelerate Learning, which includes such subtopics as early education, universal pre-K, the Office of Elementary Schools, the Office of Secondary Schools, excellence for all, advanced work classrooms, science education, literacy, vocational education, art and music, libraries, special curricular programs like APs and IB, mass core standards, MCAS, COVID-19, learning loss replacement, graduation and career readiness, credit recovery, age 22, and then the implication of federal funds for all of these things. So basically, it's the all things academic hearing, and we're looking forward to hearing from Superintendent Dr. Brenda Cassellius, Chief Financial Officer Nate Cooter, and their whole team, which I will let them introduce because it's extensive today. And I am joined here in the Zoom by my colleagues, Councillor Sabi George at large, Councillor Campbell, District 4, Councillor Flynn, District 2, Councillor Braden, District 9, Councillor Mejia at large, Councillor Edwards, District 1, and Councillor Wu at large. So we will, per usual, jump right into the presentation. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Dr. Brenda Cassellius.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, City Council members, for being here today and for the listening public. I want to thank my team and also Chief Cooter and Megan Costello, as well as Chief Corey Harris and Interim Chief Academic Officer Sylvia Romero Johnson and their teams, who will be here today speaking about academics within the district, and also providing a lot of the updates that you've already talked about. We're excited about our academic vision for Boston Public Schools and where we're headed, getting close here to finalizing some of our work around the EL Look Act, special education, and also recovery, and how we're thinking about that within our schools. You'll hear a little bit about how we support our school leaders in driving the professional development within their school buildings, and how we're supporting teachers in creating classrooms that are joyful, well-rounded, and add rigor. I just want to say again, thank you for these multiple hearings to get a good look at BPS. There's a lot to learn and a lot that we still need to do from this past year. And we will continue to discuss this, as you mentioned earlier, Madam Chair, about the commission, and also the work with moving forward, getting engagement from our parents, our educators, our school leaders, and our specialized stakeholder groups and students within the district. I wanted to give a few websites that you can go and look at to get information about the federal funding. So you can go to www.bostonpublicsschools.org/page, PAGE/8648. That will give you all of the dates and Zoom links for public comment to be able to watch the commission and also participate in public comment. And then you can also go to www.bostonpublicsschools.org/page, PAGE/8662 to see all of the community engagement that we have done or are going to be doing with all of our groups within internal to BPS. And we will post minutes there of our meetings, and you can find further information about the ESSER Commission and our community engagement. So with that, I will turn it over to Chief Nate Cooter.
Thank you, Superintendent. I know you may have met her at the last hearing, but one of my great accomplishments of this year was convincing Miriam Rubin to come and join our team during the pandemic to become our budget director. With that, I'll turn it over to her to do this morning's presentation and kickstart us.
Thank you. Good morning, counselors. Good morning, everybody. We're happy to be back with you this morning for this morning's session, as Dr. Casilius mentioned, as we dive into commitment 2 of our strategic plan, which focuses on accelerating learning. Next slide, please. We start this morning's presentation as we've started all of our other presentations, and we'll continue to start them, grounded in this statement from the Opportunity and Achievement Gap Policy. This statement continues to be the principle upon which our work is guided and will frame what we talk about as we go on today. The FY22 budget, a proposed 1.3 billion general fund allocation, features targeted investments in academics, health and wellness, and community supports. This morning's session will focus on the ways that this budget supports our key academic strategies to accelerate learning for our students. The budget we're presenting for FY22 would not be possible, of course, without the $100 million 3-year commitment that we've received from the City of Boston, that has not only allowed us to maintain our existing programming, but has also enabled us to make critical investments for our students. Our vision for FY22 is structured around 3 main sources of funding: our general funds, which includes a $36 million investment from the city as part of that $100 million, federal funding to support us in addressing the impact of COVID-19 on our district, and capital funding, which goes to supporting new schools and upgrading school facilities. This slide, as we've talked about in hearings before, represents the funding that we have received and additional funding that we anticipate receiving from the federal government for COVID-19 recovery, and will be an essential piece of the puzzle as we plan for FY22 and beyond. As we think about our budget and plans for FY22, we know that we are facing a multi-year challenge to emerge stronger than before we were hit with the pandemic. And it is for this reason that we have tied our plans for FY22 to both our long-term strategic plan for the district and also to our framework for COVID-19 recovery. You heard in our last hearings the ways we are supporting students socially and emotionally, and the wraparound approach we are taking to supporting students and families through our investments in social workers, family liaisons, and hub schools. We are excited to continue taking you through our vision by now framing the conversation around the academic strategies we are focusing on to support our district in returning well, recovering strong, and reimagining what is possible for our students. We know that the federal funding we receive is essential to these efforts, and we look forward to continuing to talk with you about the ways in which the funds will support this framing of return, recover, and reimagine. As we think about and continue thinking about returning well, we want to outline for you the structure within which our schools will be supported, along with some key initiatives that we will be continuing on for FY22. So with that, I will hand it over to our Chief of Schools, Corey Harris, to begin that conversation.
Thanks, Miriam. Good morning, counselors and general public and BPS team. My task this morning is to just briefly share with you how we see our work in the Division of Schools. We see ourselves as having 2 primary focuses. The primary focus is how do we support school-based staff, more explicitly school leaders and teachers, improve their instructional practice, and to improve the social emotional development experiences that our students have. Often in a district office, we talk about the impact that we have on students. In reality, our impact is on the adults who work with the students. So if we effectively support the adults, we put them in a better position to be able to support students and families to get to the outcomes that we need to get at. for our students. And then the second thing that we see as important to our work is helping the broader district office to identify the barriers that get in the way of our school leaders and teachers being able to focus on improving their instructional practice and improve the ways in which they engage with students and with families. One of the ways that we approach that is there's this concept called the Pareto principle. Some people know it as the 80-20 rule. And essentially what that principle espouses is that 80% of your impact comes from 20% of your efforts. And that's been proven to be true across several different markets and sectors of work. So part of what we see our focus in the Division of Schools is what are going to be our key priorities that we get really, really good at over the course of multiple years, knowing that there's tons of things that we do at the district office, but what do we want to put 80% of our focus and energies into over multiple years that points towards improving instructional practice and social emotional outcomes. One of the other sayings that drives our work is organizations don't rise to the level of their goals, they rise to the level of their systems. And so we see it as a critical part of our work to consistently be looking at the various systems across the district office and how those systems impact our school-based staff. And so some systems work well, some systems need to be improved, and some systems need to be created. And then lastly, we are really focused on improving communication. We know that change moves at the speed of trust, and communication is the most critical piece of trying to create the trusting conditions that are necessary among our school-based staff and among our broader community towards doing the difficult work that we need to do. So the way that we're organized is I serve as the Chief Schools Officer. We've been fortunate to have a resident from the Harvard Graduate School of Education in the Educational Doctorate Leadership Program. And then we have a leadership development team who really focuses on the professional learning of our school leaders and helping us get coherence in everything we do and making sure that our arrows are pointing in the same direction over the course of the school year and multiple years. We're expanding our elementary school superintendent team by adding one more member of the team. There's lots of research from the Wallace Foundation that points to the ideal size portfolio that our school superintendent should have. And that ideal size is somewhere between 10 to 12 schools. So adding one additional school superintendent is going to help us get in that 10 to 12 range. And then we're adding a temporary position called the Regional Academic Recovery Director position. And these are persons who will be really critical in helping us address some of the disrupted learning that our students and families have experienced. And they'll be critically focused on our instructional leadership teams. Our instructional leadership teams kind of set the tone and the focus for the school, so they'll be helping develop that. We're adding an assistant superintendent of network development. You can put people together, but if you don't have real intention around how those people work together and how you identify the best of what each member brings and try to leverage that towards the collective good. So super excited about that. And with our secondary school superintendents, we're expanding by 2. Last year, each of our school superintendents had 18 schools apiece that they were supporting, and they also had a secondary schools office that they were leading, which is just far too much responsibility. So we're adding 2 more secondary school superintendents to try to get down to that 10 to 12 range that the research recommends, and then also giving 2 of our school superintendents more capacity to lead the secondary schools office, do the high school redesign work, do the mass core work. And then lastly, we have an assistant superintendent of operational support who leads our operational leaders. and their task, they're responsible for managing things such as student code of conduct, interacting with families, taking care of facilities related needs. Kind of going back to number 2 that I mentioned is addressing some of the barriers that get in the way of the main focus of improving instructional practice and improving the ways that we support the social emotional development of our students. So that's just a kind of a quick recap of how we see our work and how we've organized our people to try to focus on that and ultimately to get to better student outcomes. And with that, I will pass it back to Miriam.
And I'll actually pass it on to Dr. Romero Johnson to move into our work around excellence for all.
Good morning, city councilors and community at large. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about the Excellence for All program. It was launched in 2016 to address existing inequities in programs. EFA, as we commonly refer to it, currently serves 14 schools, providing culturally responsive programming and coaching. EFA coaching supports teachers to build their capacity to provide all students with access to grade level, standards aligned, and culturally responsive instruction. EFA provides students in grades 4 through 6 STEM and world language classes, and an end of year capstone project that allows students to become experts on a topic that is most important to them and their community. The EFA team has the added focus of embedding program practices into other district-wide initiatives. EFA is developing curriculum-aligned writing units to be shared across the district. EFA is also making the highly popular Social Justice Academy model and curriculum available to schools for use in summer programming. They are also supporting efforts to increase social studies instruction in the elementary grade levels by developing high quality units aligned to the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. This year, EFA developed and facilitated professional development for all of the coaches in the transformation schools. And more efforts are taking place to spread the effective EFA practices across the district. We can go to the next slide. And now we're going to move to share with you some of the strategies that we have used for the recovery purpose. Next slide. I will start with summer school, summer learning. As you know, in previous presentations, we shared some of the work that we did. One is prioritizing students. Schools use holistic data and information from school support teams to identify priority students. In addition, BPS prioritizes students experiencing homelessness and English learners at the ELD levels 1 through 3. We also provide an ESY extension, and we review new DESI acceleration opportunities. This year, we provided acceleration academies to students at transformation schools during the vacation weeks in February and April. In all, we served 880 students using culturally relevant math and English language arts curricula to support students in grades 3 through 12. In addition, BPS partnered with 22 community-based organizations to provide 2,700 students in grades K2 through 6 a virtual learning opportunity for after-school programs. This program that began on March 8th offered instruction and small group tutoring around English language arts and math. The after-school program also offered enrichment opportunities that included music, martial arts, African dance, and STEM. You can go to the next slide. And this refers to the recovery efforts around special education. We have reached approximately 4,500 compensatory agreements, meaning that we have had discussions with many families to determine if their students need more services to remediate learning loss from the pandemic. We are able to offer all services in IEPs. These are individualized agreements. Services are offered during vacation weeks, extra weeks of summer, and after school. And we have also used CARES Act to fund this work. And we plan on offering services in the fall as well, and trying to figure out how to offer more in-person services. We can go to the next slide. The Office of English Learners has also offered multiple opportunities for students to be engaged. We offered summer programming in the summer of 2020, out of school time programs for English learners, multiple platforms for digital learning and lesson delivery platforms for ELs were made available to teachers, native language and supplemental materials. A particular platform that I want to talk about is Talking Points, which teachers can use to send message to parents. Teachers enter the text in English, and that text is received from the parent end on the home language that they have indicated in the registration forms. And then finally, academic mentoring programs through a DESI grant was offered to overage and undercredited 6th through 12th grade students, as well as transformation and alternative education prioritization. So now I will pass it on to my colleague, Christine Landry, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Academics and Professional Learning.
Thank you so much. Good morning to the City Council, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And I'm going to start by talking about our work in literacy. So investments in literacy from this current year and for next year have allowed the district to enact a new vision for equitable ELA instruction. Development of the BPS vision of equitable ELA or literacy instruction centers the needs of students who've been traditionally underserved in our district, specifically our Black and Latinx students, multilingual learners, and students with disabilities. Equitable ELA instruction is standards aligned and includes explicit and systematic instruction in decoding, so things like phonics, phonemic awareness, and fluency, intentionally building on a body of knowledge, so focusing on content, academic language, and vocabulary development, and the use of complex enabling texts. And those are the books, the texts that encourage and empower students from historically marginalized groups to take action in their own lives and in the lives of others too. Equitable ELA instruction is guided by the individual needs of students. It's culturally affirming, and it builds on the existing schema and the funds of knowledge that all of our students bring to the classroom. This instruction is delivered by teachers who understand the science of teaching reading, language acquisition, and CLSP. So the investment of $2.5 million for this current year funded new and enhanced curricular resources for our K-8 teachers and students in our transformation schools, and professional development to support the development of their new skills. As well, we have 40 transformation coaches who now support job-embedded coaching for our teachers and principals on the science of reading and equitable ELA instruction. And this year, through continuation of this funding, plus an additional $1.5 million investment in ELA instruction from the district, we'll be able to expand access to curriculum materials and professional learning for our teachers, professional learning on science of reading, and add aligned Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention materials and supports to help to close the gaps that have been created by COVID. Next slide. So by 2022, and this slide specifically speaks to our early literacy work in early childhood department. So by 2022, all of our schools that would like to use the focus materials in K0 through 2nd grade will have access to them. And by 2023, we'll have identified and started implementing across the district a strong program for struggling readers, Tier 2 and Tier 3. So those are a small group and individualized interventions that are needed for some students. And we continue to strengthen our accountability system through fidelity study and student outcomes. So through these literacy investments, we've enhanced the phonics component of our early childhood curriculum by adding what are called decodable texts. These are early reader books that allow children to practice the phonics that they're learning while reading about topics that they're studying. So quite simply, these books just give students lots of opportunities to sound out words. We've also added an approach to writing instruction informed by the work of Maria Brisk at Boston College that's particularly beneficial for our English learners. We've strengthened the curriculum for English learners in other ways too, such as bringing in more dual language texts. We've continued to work on these long-term revisions while simultaneously designing remote curriculum this year too for hybrid instruction. So beyond curriculum revisions, we've adopted a universal literacy screener, which is a literacy assessment that screens for early indicators of dyslexia and is aligned to the new Massachusetts guidance on dyslexia. And finally, you'll see that we've put in opportunities for measures that will help to make adjustments. And now for the school committee, for the city council, for the public to hold us accountable for this critical work. Next slide. And then to talk a bit about UPK as well. This year, Boston UPK is prepared to connect every 4-year-old. We are registering eligible families in K1 now, whether they choose a seat in a community-based program or a seat in the BPS classroom. So the K1 and the K2 connector system was launched last year. This year, we will increase access to quality education as early as possible with a gradual expansion to 3-year-olds in both common community-based programs and inclusion classrooms in BPS. Because this allows us to reach our diverse learners early and begin to address the long-term impacts of COVID and is aligned to our pedagogy as well. Finally, Boston UPK will expand citywide opportunities for educators across the city to deepen practice and shared strategies in professional learning communities. We anticipate the additional state funding will be used to continue to build these strong PLCs and align work across educational settings while increasing our engagement with families as early as possible. So now I'll introduce Drs. McIntyre and Brueggemann to discuss our work in high schools.
So good morning, esteemed members of the City Council, BPS team members, and community. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity. This slide on high school programming will serve to frame the next few slides representing the work of the Office of Secondary Schools. We are taking bold and deliberate action to eliminate the opportunity and achievement gap for our most vulnerable students. And we are thinking particularly about our Black and Brown students, our English learners, our overage students, and our students with disability. Our program includes increasing rigor through the recent adoption of the Mass Core, providing access to regular curriculum through what we like to call the Core 4 high school redesign, which includes making available to all students proportionally IB, International Baccalaureate programs, career and technical education, dual enrollment and early college, and advanced placement coursework. We are also paying attention to opportunities to engage credit recovery and planning for graduation and college and career readiness. Next slide, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair, City Council members, and public in general. My name is Elia Brueggemann, and I am so thrilled that we have adopted the Mass Core. As you all know, we are responsible and accountable for the education of all students at every school and devoted to eliminating the opportunity and achievement gaps facing students who have been underserved and marginalized. The Mass Core will provide this accountability for us. So we have surveyed all our high schools, including our Toronto Education, And we are actually assessing the initial budget needs required for this transition to MeaScore. We know that we probably will be adding about 57 positions that we have identified for all our secondary schools, including alternative education, to meet the requirements for MeaScore. Since the transition to MeaScore will be an ongoing cost, we will propose this as an investment on general funds. And in the next few years, we will be working very closely with each of our school leaders in order to adapt MeaScore. Now, Dr. McIntyre.
So just over the next few months.
Go back to the other slide.
Over the next few months, we'll be meeting consistently with all of our school leaders, and we will be planning for their budget collabs individually to assess their needs and to create milestones for the implementation of the MassCore. Our finance team stands ready with this up to $10 million investment to accommodate all needs as they're represented through the budget collab process and a milestone of implementation. Next slide, please.
International Baccalaureate. The high school redesign is, the International Baccalaureate is part of the high school redesign. And this is a program that is aligned to Commitment 2 to accelerate learning and will provide students with access to excellent education outcomes. We will implement the middle years program, which is grades 7 through 10, the diploma program, which is grades 11 and 12, and also the IB career-related program, which is similar to career and technical education within the IB program. The IB curriculum does address social and emotional learning, it'll address English learners, students with disability, and it's a very inclusive programming. IB aims to develop inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young adults who help to create a better and more peaceful world through intercultural understanding and respect. These programs encourage students across the world to become active, compassionate, and lifelong learners who understand other people's cultures with their difference and also to be global citizens. Again, access to IB will provide students an academic, challenging, and balanced program and opportunities to develop knowledge, attitudes, and skills to participate in a global society. Next, I will introduce our colleague, Dr. Michelle Silveria.
Good morning to members of the City Council, the BPS team, as well as the public. I'm happy to share an update on vocational education, or what we call career and technical education. Again, our budget has been very consistent. We look forward to about 1.6 million. The majority of that budget has been spent on industry-aligned equipment for our 44 approved career and technical education programs in 13 secondary schools. In response to the pandemic, we have also purchased a variety of virtual instructional materials to aid in the development of the technical skills in the remote environment. We also support industry recognized credentials and the exams that students take to earn those credentials, as well as professional development and supports for our CTE teachers. We're excited to say that we have continued to increase the number of students enrolled in CTE. As of our October SIMS, we had 2,685 students in career and technical education, with a continued focus on access and equity. About 25% of those 2,685 students are students with disabilities, 27% English learners, 70% are economically disadvantaged, and 94% are Black, Indigenous students of color. Our CTE concentrators had a 4-year graduation rate of 86.85% for the class of 2019. We're very proud of our CTE students for that graduation rate, And we look forward for DESE to release the graduation rate for our class of 2020 CTE students. As I mentioned before, we're up to 44 approved programs in 13 secondary schools, and we have an active career expansion initiative for FY22. It includes a variety of models for career and technical education, including Chapter 74, non-Chapter 74 Perkins, innovation pathways, early college pathways, the IB career-related programs, as well as a new model that we've introduced called an integrated career training pathway, which is appropriate for non-traditional schools, including alternative education. Next slide. We'll also share some information about dual enrollment in early college. Our dual enrollment course taking has increased to 468 high school students enrolled in at least one dual enrollment course. As of May, we had 3% of all high school students taking a dual enrollment course. We continue to keep an eye on equity in dual enrollment with our course taking and encouraging all students to take advantage of these opportunities. You can see that Asian students made up 3% of the population, 3.3, Black, 2.9 for Latinx. And I think I'm actually saying that incorrectly. I think it's 3.2 for Latinx and 1.8 for white students. We also continue to encourage English learners and students with disabilities to participate in dual enrollment. While dual enrollment is typically just a standalone course or perhaps several courses, we are working to increase our strategies for early college high schools. Early college high school means that the students would take a minimum of 12 college courses, 12 college credits, and be graduating with that in a pipeline into one of our community colleges or state universities. We're working with schools to set access goals. We continue to deepen our partnerships with 18 colleges and universities. That is both at the community college level as well as at the four-year college level. We're holding virtual dual enrollment information centers sessions for students and families, as well as for our school counselors to inform them of the opportunities that we offer for each session. And we continue to embed dual enrollment opportunities into career pathway experiences. Currently, we have early college designations at 3 BPS high schools. That includes Charlestown, Madison Park, and the Dearborn STEM Academy. We also have a number of schools who are interested in moving forward with an early college designation. And that means that our office will be providing additional supports to those high schools to build a foundation for the state designation in early college. That includes exploring sustainable funding, helping them to identify a college partner, strengthening the college and career advising process or the MyCap process, designing student support structures so that all students can participate in dual enrollment or early college, and creating on-ramps as needed for students. Next slide, I'll introduce my colleague, Marsha Innes-Mitchell, who is the Director of Post-Secondary Initiatives and Partnerships.
Good day to the City Council members and distinguished guests, as well as to the public. I will share some information on our advanced placement work, credit recovery, graduation, as well as college and career planning. So this academic year, we had close to 3,800 high school students enrolled in at least one advanced placement course, which is about 24% of all of our high school students in grades 9 through 12. And as you can see here, of all the students enrolled in advanced placement, about 52.8% are Asian, 17.9% are Black, 16.6% Latinx, 45.7% white, 19.1% are economically disadvantaged, and then 4.6% are coming from our English language learning group, and with 5.6% representing our students with disabilities. Here you clearly see that there are some equity gaps that we will be working to address through strategic efforts that I'll talk a little bit about as we get through the slide. As for advanced placement exams, during school year 2019-2020, we had about 2,939 students who took approximately 5,314 exams. 59.4% of those exams showed a qualifying score of 3 or higher, meaning that students can utilize these scores to be exempt from taking the course once they arrive at college. And while the number of exams that students took between the spring of 2019 and 2020 decreased by about 200 exams, we did see some growth in overall performance with about 3% more exams in 2020, showing a qualifying score of 3 or better. And this is definitely a highlight because it is an indicator of the resilience of our students and their AP teachers to quickly pivot to that virtual space during the spring of 2020 and just get the job done. So we're pretty excited to report on that piece. Moving forward, we are focused on increasing advanced placement participation, particularly at our open enrollment schools. And this year, Boston Public Schools has contracted with the College Board to begin training teachers to launch integrated pre-AP activities as well as lessons, and really approach this as a school-wide initiative. The pre-AP curricular is vertically aligned to the actual advanced placement course that's offered at the school, and it is a proven strategy that changes the ways in which schools engage students in acquiring the knowledge, skills, and concepts needed for higher level learning. We were also awarded a number of seats in a new equity and access initiative coming out of DESE. They have partnered with the virtual high school here in Massachusetts to open up 7 STEM AP courses and have identified schools where low numbers of students who were not being engaged in AP STEM, despite having the skills to participate and succeed in this rigorous course opportunity, as evidenced by their math, MCAS, and science scores. So we have 18 schools that are eligible, and we're working with our schools to identify students and go through the appropriate training to make sure that students have a quality experience this coming year in their virtual advanced placement STEM courses. We are also continuing to deepen our collaboration with Mass Insight to offer advanced placement Saturday study sessions, as well as mock AP exams through a district level contract. Advanced placement continues to be open access for all of our students, and we are committing each year to covering the cost of advanced placement exams for our economically disadvantaged students, bringing their overall contribution down to $0. Next slide. Here is a brief overview of our credit recovery program. Credit recovery is essentially an opportunity, as many of you know, for our young people to complete or recover credits needed to meet their high school graduation requirements. It is usually delivered through a blended model using an online curriculum. And this year we have moved to a new platform called Edmentum as the curriculum and have trained our school staff on this new resource. Moving forward, the goal is to design a more comprehensive approach to credit recovery as part of each school's programming and align credit recovery in a more intentional way to Mass Core. During the academic year, credit recovery looks a little different than it does during the summer. It is offered as an in-person evening online opportunity through the Twilight program, where students can take up to 2 online courses per session, and that is usually coordinated centrally. We see approximately 1,123 credit units recovered through the fall and spring credit recovery offerings as a result of this initiative. During the summer months, we're still on credit recovery. Credit recovery will be offered across 23 schools, so it will be more school-based and will be consistent with each school's instructional focus, along with embedded social and emotional supports for our young people. The summer program will run from July 6th through August 6th, with seats for approximately 3,000 students in grades 6 through 12. And for credit recovery, the budget covers the licenses for the actual curriculum. So there is a contract with Edmentum. It also covers on-site coordination and teacher stipends, as well as books, materials, and supplies needed to supplement. Next slide. Here you will see that BPS had a 4-year graduation rate, as many of you know from a lot of the public excitement, of 75.4% from our 2022 graduates, which was the highest rate on record for the district, and a 2.2% point increase from the prior year, which we were at 73.2%. 43.4% of our graduates from the year 2000 met the citywide cooperatively developed and research validated measure for college and career readiness, which is our CCLR. And that includes looking at whether or not they had attendance of 94% or better, a grade point average of 2.7 or greater, and engagement in Mass Core plus rigorous course taking. Some core strategies for increasing college career and life readiness have included really deepening our focus on positioning our 9th grade students to start their My Career and Academic plan and really engage them in a multi-year process of facilitating these plans, incorporating their kind of stakeholder, their ecosystem, and journeying with them throughout this planning process, and in hopes of them leaving us with a very solid post-secondary option. We've also been focusing on removing financial barriers through our free application for federal student aid completion initiative. We all know that FAFSA completion is an indicator that a student is on track to access a college option by the fall of their graduation, of their high school graduation. And this year, and this coming year, we will continue to increase access to bilingual financial aid advisors, as we are currently doing. We're also offering evening and weekend FAFSA completion application supports that we will continue to ramp up this coming academic year, as well as a structured and robust campaign to reach all of our families, because we know that when we're talking about issues of affordability, we can't just stop at the student level. We need to engage our parents and our guardians more deeply. This coming year, we want to deepen our focus also on academic counseling structures across our schools and increasing mentoring opportunities for students. The budget for this program area covers cost of the caps and gowns for all of our students district-wide. We have a contract for the MyCap system, which we currently use Naviance to implement that opportunity for students. We also have contracts with partners to increase their ability to provide personalized financial aid advising and college supports for our students across BPS. At this time, I will turn it over to Anthony Beatrice, who is the Executive Director for the Arts for BPS.
Thank you so much. Good morning, City Councilors and all attending today's meeting. We all know that an equitable quality arts education is an essential component of a high quality and well-rounded education for each and every student in the BPS. And so we're really excited to give you an update about our trajectory in the arts department. We're super excited about some new data that just came out through a collaboration with the BPS Office of Data and Accountability, our Arts Office, Edvestors, and the Bar Foundation. We're excited to share that we have new research findings from over 11 years of longitudinal data focused on the impact of arts instruction in the BPS. And some highlights from that research include increased student attendance, increased parent and student engagement, and even in a bump in grades 6 through 8 math and ELA MCAS scores. So as we increase our arts offerings, we want to make sure that we're providing a culturally and linguistically relevant experience for our students. Over the past 4 years, we've been deeply focused on creating sequential professional development for our arts educators that focuses on learning about our own biases, auditing our curriculum materials for bias, along with partnering with our nonprofit cultural, creative youth development, and higher education organizations in the city to expand our multicultural curriculum. We're really excited just about the investments made in the arts over the last few years. This past year, we added 12 more positions. We've almost doubled the amount of certified arts educators from 160 in 2009, and this year being the first year that we have over 300 certified arts teachers in the BPS. So that equals out to about 97% of our pre-K through 8 students receiving at least once weekly arts throughout the entire school year, up from 67% in 2009. 67% of our students in pre-K through 8 are receiving twice weekly arts the entire school year, and that's up from 10% from a decade ago. And last year, 68% of our graduates completed 1 full year of arts course taking, which is part of the Mass Core graduation recommendation, which we're adopting as a graduation requirement going forward. So really excited about really looking at each high school and figuring out where the gaps are for arts instruction, and next year studying where those gaps are and trying to find some solutions. And also we want to share our instrumental music programs are growing. A lot of people don't know, but we have band and orchestras in the BPS. This year alone, thanks to a $500,000 grant from the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation and StubHub, we expanded instrumental music in East Boston to 7 elementary schools. And next year we're adding a middle high school band director at East Boston High School. So we're going to have a full sequential music programming in that region of the city, and we hope to expand similar offerings throughout. So that is my update for the arts. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions at the end.
Thanks so much to all of our presenters. With that, we'll close our presentation with just a quick reminder that all of the materials we presented today, along with our extensive budget materials, are up on our website at bostonpublicschools.org/budget. So thanks everybody, and I'll hand it back to Councillor Bach for questions.
Great, thank you all so much for that thorough presentation. I know we're covering a lot of ground today. Per usual, I'll reserve my questions to the end. So I'll go first to my Vice Chair of Ways and Means and also the Chair of the Council's Education Committee, Councillor Anissa Sabi-George.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone for today's presentation. It was certainly and has been throughout the course of this process to date, very thorough and thoughtful. Dr. Cassellius, you've got a great team over there doing this work. I also have a number of questions, so I think that I'll need, Madam Chair, several rounds, but thought that we could start maybe with early identification intervention around literacy. I think it was Christine, Ms. Landry, who discussed and sort of talked through some of that work. I am curious very quickly, what are the metrics that we're using to determine whether or not a student knows how to read or is reading at or above or below grade level? And when we think about that curriculum that's being rolled out across the district, is that curriculum being used, is the same curriculum being used across the district through all schools? And what is that professional development that's available to support teachers in rolling out that curriculum for our kids? And do we need additional funding to support both the professional development and the continued rollout across all grade levels, especially those early years? reading and literacy in particular?
Thank you so much for the question, Counselor. And I just want to welcome to Jason Sachs, my colleague that's here, who can also support with answering these questions, but I'll jump in. So assessment is a really important component of the literacy adoption and rollout, but also recognizing that this has been a challenging year for assessment because our students were remote, using the MAP assessment, which is the assessment that we've adopted across the district to help us understand students' fluency rates and reading rates. Has been used not fully across the district this year for the 3 times that we would hope, but at least 2 times. So we do have data that tells us how students are reading, and we hope that next year we'll have the opportunity to use it fully as planned 3 times per year so that we have more up-to-date data on student reading. But we still have a lot of information from that assessment and from teacher records and working with students in small groups and one-on-one to help us gauge where we need to go with their literacy instruction for next year. As I said, one of the reasons why we adopted MAP is that it's also used as a dyslexia screener, which is something which is required by law for all schools in Massachusetts to have. And we think that it's a very strong product too, that gives us a lot of information about how to plan for instruction and also gives us those warning signals that we haven't had before about how to respond to students who may be at risk for dyslexia or other reading disabilities. And then another question that you asked was about the curriculum rollout, how many schools have that. And I would defer to Jason on the exact numbers of schools that are using the focused curriculum, but it's the vast majority of our schools have adopted in K0 through 2nd grade, which is very exciting because it is both a place-based curriculum that is grounded in students' experiences in Boston, in our home landscape and developed in-house, but it's also been enhanced as I spoke about, to be aligned with the science of reading and the things that we understand as educators about what is important for young students to know and be able to do as readers and writers. So let me turn it over to Jason for a minute for some exact numbers or other thoughts.
Sure. So it's in about 80% of our pre-K and K2 classrooms and about half of our 1st and 2nd grade classrooms. It's in now all of the transformation schools, which has been a targeted direct effort over the last year and a half. And so we'll continue to expand it. And around the professional learning and coaching, we actually put in a request this year for an expansion in coaching for supporting the professional learning around the focused curriculum and the early literacy efforts. And so I expect that we will get more coaches to help support the rollout of this. And as far as the materials, we already have the resources for the materials to get into any classroom that wants to do this. Thank you for asking about professional learning. It's critical because it takes a couple of years to learn the curriculum and be able to implement it well. And the data are pretty clear that if you're implementing it with high fidelity, you get stronger outcomes. So it's a really important question. Thanks.
No, it's great. And thank you for those responses. And, I'm curious and I guess more concerned about I'm not thrilled with too much testing, but know how important assessments are, especially in those early years regarding literacy. Is there an opportunity to, especially think about some of these one-time or 1 or 2 time funds that are coming in to invest in some intensive or invest in some opportunities to catch up with some of that assessment and also maybe provide some intensive supports for students who are behind and who have become behind largely because of this last year, either around some literacy efforts this summer or added additional literacy supports in the fall.
Yeah, thank you again for that question. And we fully agree with that. And I've tried to strike a balance between, getting the information that we need so that we can instruct students how they need to be supported, but also recognizing that it's challenging to assess students online in particular. But we plan to make sure to gather that data this summer for students who are part of our summer programming, and also in the fall, so that we have a universal understanding of where students are. And then, the investments that we've had this past year really helped us to strengthen our tier one, sort of our universal curriculum supports in all of our transformation schools and beyond. Many schools that aren't in transformation have asked to be a part of this adoption, which is really exciting. This year, we're going to expand those opportunities to access the tier one curriculum, but also the funding will allow us to move into tier two, which is more the small group, kind of time-bound supports that a student might need for a period of time, just an intervention for 6 or 8 weeks to get them back on track and back into the universal instruction, and tier three, which is that more intensive, possibly one-on-one instruction. We have been working on aligning those resources, those curriculum materials for intervention to our universal approach to literacy, so that they're all aligned and speaking to each other, and that teachers understand when and where and how to use those. So we'll be rolling out more of those opportunities this summer and into next fall, because we know that there'll be more opportunity to utilize them.
And my time is up, so I will just end with a comment. I think that we should actually be focusing on tier two investments across the board as opposed to tier one, especially thinking about just some of the initial investment needs going into wrapping up this school year. But obviously we're talking about FY22 budget going into next school year. I would tier one obviously is the standard, but I think for this period of transition and return to school, tier two should be the standard across the board. I'd like to see more of that. And then in my next round of questions, Madam Chair, if I could just lay the groundwork so BPS is prepared. I think there's a very direct correlation between libraries, librarians, and those supports in our schools, especially as we return to in-person learning. Thank you, Jason and Christine. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thanks so much, Councillor Sabi George. Next up is Councillor Campbell, then Councillor Flynn. Councillor Campbell. Councillor Campbell. I don't want us to lose time, so I'll text her, but Councillor Flynn, are you prepared with questions? Great, we'll go to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Council Balk, and thank you to the BPS team that is here. I had a couple questions or comments. Let me start with, I filed recently a resolution in support of a state bill that would allow students graduating in 2021 and 2022 to opt into an additional year if they choose to. Are there any plans for BPS to allow students to do that even without the state bill? Especially students who are turning 22 who might want to stay an additional year with, I know there was a bill filed by Ed Coppinger, Representative Ed Coppinger. Just wanted to see what your thoughts are on that.
Hi, Councillor. I can take that one. And I believe we covered this a little bit last week from Councillor O'Malley's question, but we are allowing extending anybody who's over the age of 22, if that's a choice that they want for their student. We are extending their services another year. Are certainly supportive of the legislation. It does impact, sometimes families choose not to do it because it does impact sometimes their placement. So it's really an individualized choice for families.
Thank you, Megan.
No problem.
My other question I had is, I know we're spending a lot of money during this budget season and with the federal money as well. I just don't know if we're addressing some of the unique concerns from the Chinese students as well. A high percentage of them have not gone back to school. That they've been doing remote learning, as you know, and many of their parents have limited English speaking skills. So I know they probably didn't get the necessary assistance at home. So I'm concerned about that. I just want to know what we're doing. Obviously we've seen a difficult year for them during this COVID-19 and people blaming them for the pandemic. But what are we doing for Asian students in general this summer to make sure that they get the services, the academic services, and the support that they need? And factoring in maybe their mothers or fathers have limited English speaking ability. It's educating the children as well as providing resources as well to the parents.
I can get us started. In terms of ensuring access to opportunities for learning during summer, the Office of English Learners, as well as a number of other offices, are offering opportunities for students to engage either in academic learning as well as enrichment. And in collaboration, the Office of English Learners, in collaboration with the Office of Community Engagement, we reach out to families through the use of, or through the participation of, the multilingual parent liaisons to ensure that families know what's available for their students. We are hoping to get as many students enrolled and connected to an opportunity for learning this summer. And we're working directly with principals to ensure that they know, what are the procedures, what the programs are available for each site. We absolutely acknowledge that this has been one extremely difficult year, particularly for families of Asian background who have experienced an even greater sense of possibly feeling alienated due to this situation. And our different departments are working together on ensuring that they can access all of the supports that we have to offer. Is there anyone else who would add?
Who would be the point of contact at BPS for me to contact and to coordinate with? I really don't think my constituents are getting the services that they need. And I'm frustrated about it. I talk to my constituents all the time and their parents, but my constituents deserve the same level of support and services as other students. And I just don't think my constituents are getting it, especially the Asian constituents. So I don't want time to go by and then find out in mid-July that, we don't have a program up and running for Asian students. That's why you can sense my frustration, but I would like us to resolve this so my constituents can get the same level of services as they're in a unique situation. And I think we have to think outside the box so we can get services, academic services for students and parents.
Yeah, Counselor, I'm happy to have that conversation with you more in depth than the time that's given here. We absolutely want to be intentional about supporting all of our communities and being mindful of communities that might need more of that intentional support right now. So happy to have that conversation so we can make sure that your constituents and our constituents, really our students and their families are getting the support they need.
All right, thank you, Megan. I just want to stress to the superintendent that this is an important issue for me, and I talk to the parents all the time, and they're concerned about it. So I'm glad you're working with us on it and the superintendent, but I want to make sure that my constituents in Chinatown or in the South End have the same level of services other students do too. And I'm concerned that the longer we wait and don't have a plan, it's less likely that they're going to be included in it.
Absolutely. And I can promise you the superintendent shares that same level of commitment as you.
Thank you. Thank you, Council Buck.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Going back now to Councillor Campbell, and then after Councillor Campbell, it will be Councillor Braden and then Mejia. And I neglected to note a while back that we were joined by Councillors O'Malley and Flaherty, who are with us as well. Councillor Campbell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Bach, and sorry I had to run to the ladies' room. I was like, this is real. He's along. So thank you all for the presentation and for the work that you guys are doing. Just a couple of questions. One is we get a lot of questions around Excellence for All, advanced work class, and parents are either concerned, confused about the ongoing transition. So if someone could talk to how we're engaging families in discussions about the two programs and the pause for AWC, and when will AWC be fully phased out? That's one question. The next is, and I'll just ask all my questions at once, and if I have to go to another round, I will, is there were a lot of questions, or I'm sorry, not a lot of questions. There was an announcement around the district working on a plan for high dosage tutoring. Can someone share more details on just the planning and the review process for this idea? When will families know what options are available to them? And then for programs that are, or specialized programs for folks who are English learners, for example, so the number of seats filled compared to the number of seats available. Can someone just talk about where the gaps and how we're letting folks know about those particular programs? And then lastly, one question we got, as my team and I got, was just around the Boston Year 13 pilot and the district looking to expand its partnership with Digital Ready. So is that happening? There was some conversation around an intensive program at Madison being one of the ideas. So if someone could really talk about the Boston Year 13 pilot, Digital Ready, that would be really helpful. Thank you all. And thank you, Councilor Bach.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Who on the team is ready to take those?
Lots of different things there, Councilor. I think AWC, I'm going to refer to this afternoon's hearing for the folks to answer that question. I will just say generally, I don't look at it as eliminating AWC, but really expanding and bringing rigor across all of our schools. But I'll let the team kind of get into on the specifics there. And then I think probably my colleagues are better equipped to answer some of your other questions.
Sure, and thank you so much for the questions. I can jump in to talk a little bit about the mentoring work that's starting. We see mentoring as a very important part of recovery, and there are several places where mentoring is being discussed and that work is being done. In the academics department, we received a grant from DESE to support academic mentoring. And that grant runs through the summer.
When you say mentoring, you mean tutoring?
It includes components of tutoring.
Okay, just want to be clear. Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Christine.
No, thank you. But we really do want to focus mostly on the mentoring piece now and ensuring that students, and in this case, we're focusing on students who are in grades 6 through 12, who are overage, who may have a retention already on their in their schooling experience, and have course failures currently. So that's the group of students that we're most focused on, although we're open to bringing in other students too that schools recommend. And this work, as I said, is focused first on mentoring, building strong relationships with students. We've worked with Mass Mentoring to do initial trainings for volunteers, many of whom are BPS staff members, but we do have people from outside of BPS who've signed on to be a part of this, this work too. It started in Bain in the past 3 weeks. We have about 75 students right now who are receiving mentoring support at least once per week, and we can have up to 500 students throughout the summer as part of this program. So we're working with summer school programs to sort of pair up in certain spaces so that students that are tied to a certain summer school program can receive additional support that's both relationship-based, but also be connected to the instruction that they're receiving in the summer. And there's also a transformative mentoring program that started out of the strategy office. And I'm not sure if Charles is here who can speak more to that, or we can get you more information on that project as well.
When will families, I guess, mentoring is one thing, right? Which is, I think, critically important as well, along with or coupled with academic supports, because we know many of our students are behind, whether we like it or not, academically, frankly, in some of the basics, right? This has been ongoing even before COVID. So that we've been getting a lot of questions around tutoring, around academic supports coupled with that. So when will families know, for example, what is available to them, when it is available to them, when they can sign up, et cetera? Because before you know it, I mean, well, based on this weather, the summer's already here.
Yes, absolutely. And a big part of that work has come through our summer school programming and planning for who should be involved in summer school. Also, the SST process at schools includes families as key members and determining what are the supports that each student needs as we venture to build out a plan for every student for the summer. And that could include more one-on-one support or traditional summer school programs. As we gather more data this spring on where students are academically, including the MAP assessment that we talked about earlier, we'll have a better sense of what that support can look like in the fall.
Okay.
If I can just add one thing onto that too, Counselor, I think that, this is a question everybody's asking right now. And there is a lot that is incoming for families because we're still in this pandemic. Things are still changing. And there's new information every single day, right? I sent you all a couple weeks ago the link where families can learn about all the different options that they have available to them. We continue to push that out through emails, text messages, social media, through our schools and through their teachers, multiple forms of communication so families can understand what options are available to them this summer. But this is where it does take a village, right? And understanding that there's so much families are consuming. If there's ever constituents of yours that have questions or need answers, I will resend that summer school link, which really talks about a variety of options for families, everything from the academic side to the social and emotional side to just making sure you understand what food options are available to you this summer, to understanding the after school and beyond, outside of the classroom learning experiences, all of that. But it's a lot, right? This is a lot for folks to take in. So I think the multiple messages are going to be really key here.
I just had one question on the English learners piece, and then I see the gavel can wait till further rounds.
I can address the question you have.
Oh, in the digital
about English learners.
Right. Go ahead. Yes, thank you.
Oh, English learners and
I'll
summer
take
learning.
digital.
Yeah. Okay. So the Office of English Learners offers a specific summer academy for English learners, grades 3 through 12. However, English learners are eligible to attend all other programs. We do prioritize students at ELD, English Language Development levels 1 through 3. So at least minimally, they are assured those seats, but then they are also eligible to attend all other programs. In general, we say that for this summer, we're hoping about 26,000 seats based on the combination of all of the different summer programs. And we are hoping to, as we've said in the past, that every child can opt in for an opportunity and can be matched with an opportunity during the summer.
And I will just answer.
Dr. Mack.
Hey, how are you? I'm
Good to
so
see you.
excited to see you. I'm trying to
Me
maintain
too.
that. But anyways, earlier this year, we did meet with Councilor Flaherty and Sarah Cherry Rice on the implementation and rollout of the program. And so we shared that information across our high schools. Students have been being registered and getting onboarded to be participants. We're not really sure how much or what our capacity is to engage it across our communities, but we have begun to get students signed up for the digital readiness opportunity. And Megan might want to speak to the cost.
And we can follow up specifically on some of those with you, Dr. Mack, and Sylvia, thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Bach. I want to be mindful of my other council colleagues.
Great, thank you so much, Councillor Campbell. Yeah, and we're happy, and the committee's also happy to receive any follow-up information on that front and the cost and such. Councillor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you everyone for a tremendously detailed and informative presentation this morning. I learned something new about our wonderful schools every time I sit in on these. Can you tell us a little more about the high school redesign work that you're working on, and what are the implications for high schools, the general admission high schools in the district? And then someone has already, in terms of the extended school year, how many students on IEPs are we anticipating being on an extended school year? And how does that relate to services from related service providers? Are they getting the full menu of services during an extended school year time? And the other issue I had, many of I know from my experience of talking with folks at the Brighton High, there's a significant number of our students in high schools who are actually working significant hours, like 30, 40 hours a week. During COVID, they actually found that online learning suited them very well because they could schedule their work around the start times of the work in a more flexible way. I think we have to be very nimble in recognizing that we have a cohort of students in our high schools who are breadwinners for their families, or supporting themselves or helping to support their families. And I'm wondering, in terms of innovation and new programming, what are we thinking about ensuring that they have access to high quality education while also working? It's a reflection of the world we live in, that many of these families require students of high school age to get out and bring some money into the family. So those are, let's see, professional learning. I'd also like to know a little more about, I'm really applauding the wonderful plans for excellence for all, and the advanced work classes are really seen as a great asset. But I'm just thinking about the general admission high schools. The students get in there. What are the requirements are the prerequisites to entering into a program like the International Baccalaureate program? And I think that might be enough for now. Thank you.
I'll get started, and then Dr. Brueggemann can take over with more explicit opportunities to discuss Brighton High School. But I am so glad that you asked those questions, and we are being very nimble, very innovative, and very responsive to creating multiple pathways for our students to be credited and gain even mass core completion through this process. And so we know that many of our students, as a result of the disproportionate impact of COVID, have had to go to work to support their families, our English learners, as well as our Black and Brown students. And so we've engaged school to work opportunities for them, where we are tying competencies to their opportunities to work, credit recovery, competency-based learning. We're looking at demonstrated mastery of content regardless of seat time. We're not expecting someone to sit for 990 hours in a seat in order to be competent, but to show their mastery in multiple perspectives. And we're also really heavily engaged in project-based learning, where it can extend beyond the walls of a school and incorporate one's opportunity to work and to learn and to connect that to content and experiences that they would have in school. We're creating a virtual school experience for students, and we're not discounting internships or externships, but including them as part of a student's opportunity to be credited. I want to add on that we are making our partnerships with community members viable and supportive of a student's experience. If we have a student that's playing with an external soccer team, how do we engage that as part of this student's school opportunity for physical education? The same with AAU basketball or any gym membership that a student might engage outside of the school. Also our partners, Sociedad Latina and all that they offer. We partnered with Build, Campus Without Walls, so students have opportunities 24/7 to access learning on a virtual platform. So we're really being nimble and innovative around responding to the needs of our students during the pandemic with an eye open to these effects will last long after the pandemic. So how do we institutionalize them and create systems that always have them available for our students? So multiple pathways. The open enrollment schools have typically served the highest need students and had been resourced less than our other schools. So our focus on the open enrollment schools is very clear. And we talked a little bit about it in the presentation around engaging the core four. And there are no prerequisites for a student to have access to an AP course. We're building pre-AP models in the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade and 10th grade opportunities so that when they get to the 11th, the expectation is that they're ready and we're open for them to be engaged. The same with IB, creating a pathway right now that starts at the 7th grade and goes all the way through the 12th. So it's just a matter of choice and not a matter of a special selection process for a school to be identified, for a child to be identified as ready for IB curriculum. And so all of the resources that we're engaging in our open enrollment schools, CTE, early college, dual enrollment, are wide open for every student to have access to. That's the spirit behind it, removing barriers, creating access, and providing opportunities for all students to be engaged in rigorous, demanding opportunities that ready them for a life, for college, for career. And I'll ask Dr. Brueggemann to speak to Brighton.
Thank you, Dr. McIntyre. In regards to Brighton, as you know, we have a new leader over there this past year, Mr. Andrew Buck. He's innovative and he is creative. So we have gotten together to create a schedule for this coming year where he is looking at students that are working, because we do know the population of Brighton. There are many English learners specifically who need to work to help their parents, especially from this pandemic, from bringing, especially all the needs that the families that do have. And I know he's also working at the Student to Work program. As you know, the EDCO program closed, so we bring in the EDCO program inside Brighton, which will be part of Brighton, and have the access to a school to work there, but also for the general population of students. He is aware of the online program that the district initiative is, and he's going to be working to see how we can align that for our students. He also is aware of the campus walls for more access. One more thing that we are looking right now is what we call in the Common Course Catalog, where we are selecting some schools to be part of this pilot for the school to be open from 7 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night in a blended learning model. And in here, students, especially those who work, will have the access to just think about college. I take a class in the morning, go to work, then come back and take a class in the afternoon, which is also part of our high school redesign strategy. Again, with the project base that they do have over at Brighton, there are combinations where we can certainly be more flexible for students who are working.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited and impressed. I think having a really flexible approach and also giving credit, these young people are demonstrating incredible determination, resilience, and just creativity in finding jobs and being employed. And you know, I'm delighted to see that we're recognizing some of those great talents and trying to cultivate them further.
Yeah, and you know, and I will tell you, I'm a daughter of a migrant worker, and it's what I needed to do to help my family, you know, with an flexible schedule to access my academics.
And I am delighted to hear that, because someone with learned life experience of these can really empathize with the challenges that our students are facing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Braden. Next up is Councillor Mejia and then Councillor Edwards. Councillor Mejia.
Thank you. I'm happy to see some of my favorite people on this call and really do appreciate Dr. McIntyre's long life commitment to Boston Public Schools. We've worked
So good to see you.
And I'm encouraged to see you in this role. And welcome to all of the other folks who have been out here pounding the pavement, fighting for our ELs and all that good stuff. So thank you.
Yeah.
Questions. So I always joke around about the fact that if MCAS were around when I was in high school, I probably would still be in high school. So I'm just, you know, from what I understand, the way the MCAS appeals work, you need to have taken ELL and math test 3 times and have had a 95% attendance rate in order to go through that appeals process. I'm curious about a lot of the students who are juggling to make ends meet and working to help put food on the table and attendance. I know that for me, I skipped a lot of school to do just that. So attendance wasn't my best suit either. So I'm just curious, what do we know and how are we utilizing MCAS appeals for students in these type of situations? I'm also curious, we're seeing a 27% reduction in reading according to program details for FY22. How does this align with our goals of boosting literacy? And on the topic of literacy, our office recently filed a task force to do a deeper dive and to boost literacy rates and to improve services for people who cannot read or write in any language, either due to a disability or because of their interrupted education. And I'm just curious of what are your initial thoughts or responses to looking at this as an opportunity to address some of the deficits that we see in the learning and reading for students in our Boston Public Schools. I'm curious as what I've been hearing a lot about Madison Park, and now I'm on the program advisory board, and I have a soft heart and loud voice to ensure that we're supporting Madison. So I'm just curious, what are your plans to support the current leadership at Madison Park to set them up for success? What are the plans specifically for Madison Park? We've been led to believe that there's been some conversation around some transition in the leadership. And I just want to get it on the record and have a better understanding of what's going on with Madison Park and supporting the current leadership to ensure that they're set up for success. And I have other questions, but that will be for round 2.
So good to see you. And I'm going to get started with first reminding or introducing the idea that Boston has presented to the school committee that we not use the no credit process for our students in reference to their attendance. What we realized was it was a racist policy, and the students that were being given the no credits or the failures relevant to no credits were the students who were Black and brown. So we have suspended the use of that policy and since embraced this opportunity for students to demonstrate their mastery and not use seat time as the predictor of someone's abilities. So that's to answer the no credit policy and to uphold the no seat time policy as well. I want to talk a little bit about Madison Park. So we are in the process of securing a new leader for Madison Park. We're coming down to the wire right now, working very intensely with parents, with students, with BTU teachers, and with BASIS members, as well as central office members to engage that process and community members. And it has been moving right along. So the plan for Madison is to make it Boston's premier, one and only vocational school, vocational technical education school. And so what that means in terms of resourcing it efficiently and effectively, assessing the vocation programs that they're currently offering and updating them to programs that are specific to employment opportunities today. And Michelle can chime in on the vocational aspect, but working really closely with networks of champion of networks, which are external business partners, vocational partners, and community partners, Friends of Madison, to really be comprehensive in engaging the school for the students that it will serve in the community. Madison Park is one of our open enrollment schools, and so it is part of the high school redesign and has been given specific investments above others in terms of social workers, in terms of instructional coaches, family liaisons, all in an effort to become cohesive and coherent around the services they're providing. You have a question?
Before I get the gavel, I just kind of want to be clear. I'm curious about when we talk about this transition. I know that Kevin McCaskill has been really successful.
He has been.
I'm curious if this transition includes removing him from that space and bringing him into the district, because I feel like over the last 6 years, he's poured so much into Madison Park, and now we're getting to a good place. And it seems like with everything in the district, that once things start working, we start unworking that work. And I'm concerned about that. I just want to name it and push back on it. And I just want to get some clarity around whether or not this transition requires removing Kevin from his role.
So I can just speak to it very quickly. Kevin will continue to work in the area, but he will be scaling up all of the knowledge and skills that he has so that other schools within the district will have access to the same opportunities as part of our redesign. We're building out CTE pathways across all the open enrollment schools, and Kevin will be an instrumental part in lending and loaning his expertise into engaging that opportunity. And in that sense, Kevin will relocate to central office, but will be still a part of or have his eyes and ears to the ground of what's going on at Madison, along with Michelle Silveria, Dr. Silveria, sorry.
Give me the gavel and the grade here. We could just go into the literacy question, and then I'll use the rest of any time I have for round 2.
Yeah, before I turn it over to the academics team, I just wanted to, you had asked a question about the reduction in budgets related to literacy. I think one of the sort of communication challenges we have on the budget side is that we try and organize our budget so that it reports out how we're using it. While at the same time, we have a number of elements to our budget that are technical and operational in nature. And so I think the reduction that you're referring to is a change in what we refer to as program codes related to reading and literacy. There are two reasons for those changes that are not significant changes in our literacy initiatives or the way we're supporting students around literacy. The first is, as you know, the school committee voted to close 2 schools at the end of this year. The first is the Edwards Middle School in Charlestown. The second is really a merger of the McCormick Middle School with BCLA. As part of that, there's a number of positions and budgets in those 2 schools that end up going away, or in the receiving schools, recoding them. That explains part of why you see a change. And I should have put a little bit of a nerd alert at the start of this one. This is a very technical answer. The second thing is the district has been doing a full inclusion rollout. So each year we have seen an increase in the amount of inclusion grade by grade. And so for next fall, or for this year, it was in 7th grade. And when that happens, we recode a whole bunch of positions at the schools so that they meet the union sort of qualifications. We know what teachers, what licenses are needed for teachers, and how they're sort of supported in the hiring process, or how they're indicated in the hiring process. And so we see a bunch of recoding that happens around, particularly at the middle grade level, content specific coding, like reading or math or science, into an inclusion coding with other data that reports out what content area they're teaching. This was a long way of saying that the changes you're seeing in the budget, in this case, are changes in operations and how we need to code our budget. It's not an indication of any shift around our literacy and supporting. And just to talk about how we are supporting literacy, I'll turn it over to the academics team, I think.
I'm going to break in, Nate. I would prefer if the academics team would hold that answer on literacy to the second round for Counselor Mejia, just because I don't want us to rush through it in 30 seconds. But I know that Counselor Edwards, who's up next, has a time crunch, so I want to get her in. So Counselor Mejia, I'm sorry, but we'll just defer it to the next one. Counselor Edwards.
Thank you. My first question is just an update on the Kaleidoscope program. I believe District 1 was going to be kicking off that pilot. And that was part of last year's budget. And I was just, I wanted to know what has happened with it, how this is being integrated or not. I personally had not real any kind of pro or con for it. It just seemed like it was decided that we're going to do this Kaleidoscope program, and the pilot would be in District 1. I'm also wanted to hear about, you mentioned the Edwards, and there's 2 things or narratives that are going on about the Edwards. One, I know that there's a $500,000 RFP that was put out last year. I don't know if it was ever accepted or if someone had been selected to help with the planning of the Edwards I want a commitment to it being an educational facility. And then I do know that there's questions about whether it would be the swing space, temporary swing space for the Horseman. So I'd love to have those 2 things kind of settled, just decisive, quick answers. 1, is it going to be swing space? 2, is the RFP out? And will it, has it been accepted by anybody else? And then 3, what is the status of the Kaleidoscope program? So I'll just start there.
The RFP for the Edwards was related to a design firm to be able to come in and work on the consulting. We have not put that out to bid yet, so we're not ready to move forward. The next step in the conference is a community-based conversation. And while we get an answer on Kaleidoscope, I can pull up the exact dates for the next conversation with Charlestown, which is in the next few weeks. We have not made a determination about the final swing space for the Horseman School. And so that's the quickest version of those 2 questions I think I can get.
Well, since we're on those, will we have answers to the RFP that bid? Well, why didn't it go out, and why wasn't it put out at all? Are you having the community conversations for us to define what's in the RFP?
Yeah, exactly. And I should have said clearly, and it's probably why Megan's like leaning towards her camera. We are planning to use the Edwards School for school space. We are not planning to dispose of that property. It will be used for BPS to serve the needs of our community. The design firm and the hiring of that happens in sequence of knowing exactly how we want to use that space. So it's designing a specific space for a specific purpose. And so with the pandemic interrupting a lot of our community engagement around Build BPS, we have not yet had enough of the community conversations. And we're planning to go back to the community here in the next few weeks to present what we think are some options and to make sure that we're hearing from the community about how they want to use the space to meet the needs of their students.
And that will inform the RFP.
And that will inform exactly. So, if one of the options is that it becomes early childhood space to supplement either the Warren Prescott or the Harvard Kent, then the designers will go in and assess the space and make recommendations for how to convert that space most effectively for early childhood. Or if it were to become swing space for the Horseman, we would work with the designers to identify all of the modifications that need to happen to make it an appropriate space for the deaf and hard of hearing communities. That's what I mean. The designers come on to fit the building to the specific educational program that we've settled on. And because of the delay in the engagement, we've had a delay in that project.
Will the RFP go out this year?
Yeah, so yes, assuming
my
all the
concern.
engagement
Here's my
goes well.
concern. There's a lot of transition, right, going on with BPS, right? We're getting, by that I mean we're getting a new, we have an acting mayor, we'll be getting a new formal, like elected mayor in November. And that can change who's running BPS, that can change the goals of BPS, that can change all of these things, including this RFP. Mm-hmm. And what's committed in contract is what actually gets done, as far as I can tell. And so I want this RFP out and accepted and done, because I think that's an actual commitment. It's beyond the words. It's beyond the we should, could, would. It actually means it's going to happen regardless of who ends up being elected in the fall. And I'm telling you that it means everything to me that there's a commitment that this RFP is out and accepted this year, because that's the only commitment I see actually that I can hold BPS or hold whoever is the future mayor accountable for. So this is nice. This community process is nice. It's not a commitment. It's not actually real to me. And it has to be, because we have not achieved the goal of universal pre-K. We do not have enough K0 seats in not just Charlestown, East Boston, my district, but throughout the whole city. We don't have enough, and I don't see a commitment. And even now, still wavering as to whether we're going to have a Horace Mann in there or not. I'm ambivalent, but again, there's no commitment from BPS. I know you said you will keep it as an educational facility, but I want that in writing. And the best way to see that in writing is an RFP where you put your money where your mouth is. Now, just real quick, the Kaleidoscope program, could someone explain how that pilot program is going, or if it's going?
Sure, I can start by answering that question, and then Corey Harris can also jump in and add some more context there. The program was piloted this year with the Elliott School. It has not started yet with a larger group of schools, but right now there's an engagement process that's going on that's included families, racial equity planning tool process, and will lead to the development of a pilot advisory team later in May or into June to really plan out what this work will look like in the schools. Basically, the Kaleidoscope project is out of DESE, and it's focused on deeper learning and specifically focused on teacher professional learning and how teachers interact and plan together. But I'll turn it over to Corey for any other context he'd like to add. When you're on mute, Corey.
Christine, I think you did a good job of covering it. The only additional thing I would add is starting in January, they began mapping out what the professional development would look like for the upcoming 21-22 school year. So that needs lots of prior planning and intention, and they have done their due diligence in that regard. So we look forward to really diving in this upcoming school year and many years beyond.
So in short, the Kaleidoscope program is going along as planned, has not been changed at all by the pandemic, is funded, am I summarizing what you guys said correctly?
Yes, I would say that's correctly. I think the way I would look at the Kaleidoscope this current school year is like what a lot of people call a year zero. So it's kind of a year to get some foundational knowledge, get feedback from the different participants, and then go full launch in 21-22. So the commissioner is deeply dedicated to it. We're committed to being a part of it, and it's actually a part of the MOU that the district and DESE have negotiated. So there is a commitment to the work.
So I see the gavel. Before I go on this round, can I get a summary in writing then of this year zero and expectations for the Kaleidoscope program for District 1? Again, I think it's just District 1 that has it, right?
That is correct. At the present time, just Region 1 with the intention to expand in upcoming years. But Dr. Tommy Welch has been leading that work closely with the DESE team and with Tracy, the principal over at the Elliott. I will ask him to get us a brief summary.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Councilor Edwards. Next up, we've got Councilor O'Malley, and then it'll be Councilor Flaherty. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize. I had a 10 o'clock, so I missed a lot of your presentation, but I've just been going through the PowerPoint with some notes, so I appreciate that. So you may have answered some of these questions. Again, apologies for making you be redundant, but first off, you know, it goes without saying that the motto, return, recover, reimagine, is one that we all celebrate, and I truly do appreciate the incredibly talented staff of Boston Public Schools who are dealing with something that is so unimaginably challenging. And I know everyone's heart's in the right place, and I'm hopeful that this is an opportunity for us to work collaboratively and also, you know, learn from you, and hopefully you can get some ideas from us as well. So I'm sure that Councillor Flynn had brought this up, and perhaps Councillor Braden as well. The three of us co-sponsored a hearing, and Megan, I think I popped on as you were answering this. As it relates to, you're going to hear from some of my constituents a little bit later during public testimony, as it relates to sort of our highest need students
Councilor O'Malley, we just lost you. Councilor O'Malley? Sorry, everyone. Work on getting our council president back here. Councilor O'Malley, you back?
Yes, I am back. I'm trying the phone now. So sorry about that.
Okay, great.
I'm in my office, which seems to have, despite the fact that I'm on the City of Boston employee, I have terrible connection. So, and my shirt looks very loud in the phone, so apologies for that as well. Anyway, is this connection better, Madam Chair? Just give me a thumbs up.
Yes,
Yep,
yes, it's
perfect.
better. I'm giving you your time back, so.
Thank you. Well, very briefly, can we walk through, and I'm sure this was discussed earlier, as it relates to our highest needs students who, if you're 22 years old, there is a 1-year extension given the severe learning loss of this year. But for the students who are maybe 19, 20, or 21 years old, what has to happen to give those parents the peace of mind that we'll be able to extend their learning, the learning opportunities for their children going forward?
Thanks, Counselor. I don't think Ethan, our Director of Special Education is here with us, so I don't want to answer incorrectly. What I will say is we're, deeply committed to supporting families in their recovery here. But I will get specifics on some of the 19, 20, 21-year-old students and where that stands.
But I guess, Megan, even more simply, what needs to, state law is the current cutoff at 22 years old, right?
Yep.
And there's been a 1-year extension given the learning loss for this year, right? So
Yep.
If you're 20, we'll have 23-year-olds next year. So does that state law provision, is that only good for 1 year?
I need to talk to Ethan about the specifics of that and loop back with you.
Okay, I mean, it's fine to, I don't mean this to sound combative. If not, we would need to have state legislation passed again. It's great to hear that BPS is committed to serving our families. I have no doubt that you are, but we need I need, and the parents that I represent need some concrete steps that need to be taken. It may be that BPS's hands are tied and we need to focus on the state level. So I guess it's just frustrating. We need a little more clarity on that.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think we'd appreciate your partnership, right? And that if we do have to move that legislative route. So I will talk to Ethan and we'll get back to you on some specifics.
Okay. And then I know there's been a lot of talk about summer learning and as it relates to obviously such a crucial time. Can you just talk briefly through how we're engaging our school communities, our students, our parents, all stakeholders, that there will be summer learning opportunities available, how you have to sign up, what the interest has been thus far. In the old days, you would go to summer school if you were falling behind in a particular subject, but this seems that it would be a larger ecumenical approach and allowing more students to make up for some lost time. So does someone want to jump on that?
I can get us started. We are working with across schools, with all of our stakeholders, with all of our principals, particularly on a weekly basis about all of the details of facilitating, prioritizing students, and helping families enroll students, et cetera, et cetera. We have a communication strategy going out as well so that families know what is available, and support for families that need somebody to walk them through how to enroll. A lot of the work happens at the school level and with school leaders and a coordinator at the school site, and there's a point person that each program has at every school that offers that program, so that we can, walk families on the enrollment process.
Okay, and do we know thank you for that, Sylvia, do we know offhand how many families are sort of preemptively signing up for this? Is it too early yet? Can you just sort of talk about what interest has been?
Yeah, it's still early, but we are ramping up our communications process. We want to make sure that families know exactly how to do. The other part that we're also trying to do is to ensure that we have staffing and that our teachers are signing up to teach in the different programs. So we're managing it on both levels, the student enrollment and having enough teachers to teach.
So no early numbers you can share yet?
Not yet, but I can get those for you.
Great. Yeah, more curious. Obviously, that'll inform how many teachers and then what the budget looks like, because obviously the teachers would get a stipend or some salary adjustment to continue that. I really appreciate a lot of the focus on the PowerPoint as it relates to our high school. Well, two points echo everything that Councilor Edwards said as it relates to universal pre-K and how we need to. It's an important issue. We've all been talking about, we need to see some better action there. And then on the flip side, looking at high school programming, and there was some great statistics as it relates to IB programs and AP programs. And it reminds me of a policy proposal from an intern of mine last summer as it relates to the AP schools. And our AP classes offered in the high schools. I don't have the exact statistic, but I think it's safe to say that some of the exam schools would probably offer, I don't know, 30, 40 different AP classes, and other high schools might offer a handful. So I wonder if there's been talk about having more access to AP classes, specifically in our non-exam high schools, through Zoom.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yes. Go ahead, Lindsay.
So, so absolutely, we're partnering with Mass Insight. We've got other initiatives that are going on in individual schools with Mass Insight to increase access to AP coursework for Black and Latinx students, very specialized opportunities, and just working from pre-AP to AP to build readiness for the rigor of AP coursework and making it available through Zoom, just as we make other classes available.
And this past summer and throughout the year, we provided professional development for teachers in the area of ELA, in the area of biology, social studies for pre-AP in order to get our students in our comprehensive open enrollment high schools more prepared for AP. This will also continue this coming summer and this coming year, especially bringing that to the level of our middle school students. In training those teachers so that when students get to the high school, even in 9th grade, they can access social studies classes for AP. We are also looking at the pre-AP for algebra for this coming summer and this coming year to also do that training for our teachers.
No, it's great to hear that. And I think, you know, the optimist in me looks always for the silver lining. While there's few silver linings of this last year, seeing how we've all been able to really quickly adapt to technology, and not to supplant. I mean, in-person teaching is so important. In-person meetings for our sake are so important, but allowing for better opportunity and communication. And that was a thought I had, that these AP classes will not only help challenge kids and push kids, but if they do well and go on to college, they can often get college credit if they score 4 or 5.
Certainly. Yeah.
You could save tens of thousands of dollars down the line as well. So it's just I'm glad to hear that. You know, I'd love to follow up online on more specifics, what we can look like, but could we get to a point, you know, it would be great to say that BPS could offer, you know, theoretically up to 20 or 25 different AP classes in every high school, because again, right now the differential is so stark. And then finally, and I don't know if this is for BPS commitment to, if it's not, you can cut me off, Madam Chair, but there's been some talk about doing a completely, on this vein, online school for families that are interested next year. Is there any more sort of, has that idea been discussed or fleshed out a little bit further? As an option, not obviously as an option for families who choose it.
Yes, we have submitted a letter of intent to the DESE, and we will be posting the position for the principal for the school. So that is in the works, in motion.
And would this be K to 12?
Yes, I believe so, right? Is there anybody in the team?
I believe it's 6 through 12.
6 through 12, thank you.
Yes, starting with 6 through 12.
Thank you.
Do we know, I mean, obviously there's been enough interest from families that you must have some gauge of what the enrollment would look like.
I mean, I think Counselor, you know, like a lot of things that we've experienced this year, this is ever evolving, but it's certainly something that we're exploring. No firm decision has been made on this. It's simply right now gathering those facts that you're talking about. What would enrollment look like? What would design look like? Who would this be serving? How would this work? How do we make sure that students, you know, social emotional needs are still met? Right, access to food, all of those questions, right, are still all of the big outstanding things. But we did see it as an opportunity to say, we know that this has worked for some students. And so it deserves at least a serious look to see if this is something we could do.
No, listen, I think you said it well, Megan. I certainly have reservations, but think there's an opportunity here to flesh it out a little bit more and engage what interest would look like. So keep us posted. And that is all for this round. Apologies for my poor connection. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And next up, we've got Councillor Flaherty, and then it'll be questions for me. Councillor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair and BPS. I'll probably have like 6 or 7 rapid fires, and I'll listen for the answers. First one is, do we have a plan for the use of federal funds relevant to our learning loss, graduation and career readiness and credit recovery programs? There was a mention of the accelerated academies. 800 students will be enrolled. Can we enroll more? And can they expand on what acceleration academies will do? They also mentioned CTE enrollment has increased. What's the graduation rate of CTE students compared to students in regular curriculum? I see the budget is $25,000 this year in the area that would consider for dual enrollment in early college opportunities and what they provide our students. And that's clearly what I think Council Campbell was talking about with respect to Boston Year 13. I'm very happy to see STEM AP expansion to schools. How many schools will offer AP courses in STEM? And do we also, with respect to summer credit recovery, do we have enough seats for those interested in credit recovery? And obviously I'm excited and congrats to BPS for particularly the area of arts and music and the increased certified art instructors. That's great news. And then lastly, if you have time, presentation notes that we need 57 additional positions in secondary schools. What's the hiring plan for those positions? That seems to be a significant growth in personnel. And if you could maybe explain the growth in personnel as we're sort of losing student population. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll listen carefully.
I can take the last question just as sort of a Kickstarter while people take the other more hard questions. The 57 FTE for MassCore implementation was the estimate based on the current high school schedule and what additional classes they'd need to add. But we go through a long process. The goal is for FY23. So it's not part of this year's budget. We're not doing any additional hiring right now for MassCore. We will be working with the schools throughout the fall and into the winter to put together the budget proposal that makes sure they have the staff that they need, where we will eventually see the full implementation. That may be existing teachers that are changing their course load, or it could be, a net gain in FTE. So that's work that we're still doing about the implementation. It's not something that we're hiring for right now.
And I just want to add to Nate, what Nate is saying is, this is really about building some uniformity and expectations across our high schools. So we're really bringing that rigor and standards that is predictable for parents, right? So you can know that when you're going to X high school, you understand that there is a baseline that you can expect for your student.
I can respond quickly about the CTE graduation rate. We have a graduation rate of 86.85% for the CTE graduates from the class of 2019. The Department of Education has not released the CTE graduation rate for class of 2020 yet. And we certainly can share that as that data becomes available.
And I'll talk a little bit about the questions around advanced placement. Currently 24, about 34 high schools and diploma granting programs do offer AP. At every single one of their schools there are one or more advanced placement STEM courses. Now, what DESE is offering is access to 7 virtual courses that will be taught by master teachers across the state and have opened access to 18 of our eligible schools to participate. Now, of those 18, 12 schools will be moving forward this academic year, while the remaining schools will use this coming year as a planning year to ramp up their structures and supports to ensure that they're just not putting students on the course, but they have systems and better systems in place to really ensure those students' success. And so we're really excited that we were able to position 12 out of the 18 schools to take advantage of that. In regards to dual enrollment, we are putting forth some funding requests through our ESSER plan. which has to go through a robust approval process to cover additional coursework for students who are eligible and interested and eager to access dual enrollment. So we would need to cost share the actual course credit, the cost for the course credit and materials, books, and supplies with the institutions, because the Commonwealth Dual Enrollment Program only funds a certain amount of the courses at certain institutions, and we want to really deepen and widen the program offerings for our young people. We're also exploring in an exploratory phase of what it would entail to launch a Gateway to College initiative that would open access to our alternative education students to complete high school while earning some college credit. So we'll have more information and details as things evolve with that effort.
And I can speak a little bit to summer credit recovery. It is our expectation to make credit recovery available to all students with a primary focus on those students who may need that opportunity to engage in August graduation. But in addition to credit recovery being available, we will also have ESY programs, EL programs. The task force, the special ed task force, is working as we speak on specialized programs for students with disabilities over the summer, working with the PIC, After School and Beyond, and fifth quarter portfolios, which is an extension of the accelerated programs over the summer. It's like a fifth quarter. So all of that will be made available to all of the students in the Boston Public Schools, and they'll have access.
Very good. Let me thank you all for your passion and your commitment to our children and efforts to improve the quality of education in our city and make sure that we continue to be a school system that works for everyone, all of our people, not just some of our people. And so that's been one of our strengths in terms of we educate all children, and happy to continue to support those efforts, and appreciate your time and attention. And we'll have some additional questions in round two.
Great, thank you so much, Councilor Flaherty. Now I'll go to my questions. Give myself a timer. I mean, I guess the first thing to say, obviously the vote to adopt the mass core standards last week is historic and a huge deal. And I know something that a lot of people on this call have been working on for a long time, and not just in terms of, you know, getting off the line of across the line of officially doing it, but thinking about how to do it in ways that really support all of our learners and all of our schools, and provide the kind of, you know, support that we need. And I think it's so important for folks to know that graduating from BPS does mean that you've had all of these academic opportunities, right? And that everybody across the board had those. And then I think we got to support everybody in actually taking advantage of those. So it's yeah, it's just obviously a huge deal, and I wanted to acknowledge that. I did want to ask the budget question, Nate. It looks like, I mean, the proposal there, the 10 million, is that an annual number?
Yeah, that would be the ongoing costs of running the schedule to meet the mass core requirements.
And that's sort of I mean, that's an artifact. That's $10 million to get all the right courses offered in all of our high schools, assuming that everything stays the same size, right? It's not a kind of enrollment adjusted, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct. It's based on current enrollment of students and no changes to the existing programming, all of which is, you know, putting this estimate together at this point is always.
Yeah, it's back of the envelope.
But, right.
It's back of the envelope, but I think it's probably worth saying, right? Because I mean, you know, so there is a thought that, so it's like this next year is the planning, figuring out what schools are going to need, et cetera. But then the notion would be that next year the schools would be coming to the council / the next mayor, hoping not just for the 33 million in new investments that we're committed to, but actually another 10. So actually hoping for 43.
No, I mean, so you're talking about the 3-year,
yeah,
$36 million commitment.
Yeah, the 3-year, $100 million. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. Apologies, Superintendent. The 3-year, $100 million commitment. the superintendent had always intended for the second year to be really high school focused and expanding opportunities and rigor at the high school level. And due to COVID and sort of our need to reprioritize around social emotional supports and family liaisons, we shifted the timing and now coincides with the adoption of Mass Core standards, which are great. So that 10 million would be part of the proposed increase of the 36 million. Currently how we're thinking about the ask for FY23. Of course, we're still very early in the process. This is way earlier than I would normally talk about any FY23 budget proposals, but that's the sort of ideas that it works within that framework.
No, that's great. And I'm glad to hear that, only because I just think fiscally having it be another 10 would be a real lift. And the reality is, you know, none of us know exactly who's going to be making that decision on the mayor's side, but also it's not just about that person. It's about the fiscal situation of the city and where new growth is hitting. And we, you know, we all know that we think next year's fiscal year, we may get some of the after effects of the slowdown in construction in terms of our budget and everything. So I'm relieved to know that, because I do think it's super important for us to implement this. So, so that's helpful. Thank you for that. And then circling back on the mentoring, tutoring piece. So I get that the idea is it's focused, it's an investment, 850 from DESE, focused on, you know, this summer up to 500 kids, in particular folks who have had a retention previously. So I got that. I guess I'm wondering, because this is sort of me extending a question I asked last week that you all said to bring to this hearing. It seems to me like there's another batch of students who are going to really need kind of both a mix of mentoring and academic tutorial support, and really like attention on them in September if we're not going to lose them. And I'm thinking about especially the ones with a short road to graduation, right? So our high school folks who don't have 6-10 years to sort of get back on course if COVID was really hard. And I can just imagine if you've been cutting virtual class and then you're showing up at a school that like maybe you don't even know because you're a sophomore, but you never really showed up much in person. Like it's very easy for me to imagine those people getting unengaged. And I would love to see some of the like that interpersonal mentoring relationship, and frankly also that like high impact academic support, like, oh, you're cutting because you couldn't learn math this way last year, so we need somebody over your shoulder. So those seem like potentially a different group than the group that's being described for this summer thing. And so I want to hear sort of what we're thinking about for them.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And that I definitely agree with everything that you just shared. You know, the DESE funding, which we're super grateful for, gets us through this summer, but we would love to see this turn the corner into the school year for the reasons that you mentioned. For students who are in 9th grade right now, who have just setting foot in their school for the first time in the spring, right? For students who are in 8th grade right now, but have struggled or have had a retention before, and we know that there are early warning indicators already in place, and we need to support them in making that transition to high school. So that's why we wanted to focus on this subset of students with this work. But as I mentioned, in the strategy office, there's work going on to think about how do we provide mentorship to all students who need it in BPS as an ongoing component of our academic plan. So those are things that we are definitely thinking about and working on to get to that next set of students that you're talking about. Because I think, you know, generally we're going to need a mix of two different things happening here, where we need to continue to provide and get better at providing sort of that quality, universal, standards aligned instruction to all students so that we don't create new gaps for students, but at the same time, for the kids who have fallen behind, during this time or didn't feel engaged in this year of learning, that we're working to close those gaps and make sure that they have a trusted adult to work with. So this is sort of our fledgling opportunity to do that. We're learning a lot as we go, but our goal absolutely would be to continue mentoring and tutoring together as one component to support students who have been behind.
And how do we make sure, so it sounds like this is something where we may be using federal funds to wrap around, and that's going to be part of the conversations that we're having. So that's helpful. How do we think about, because it is a balance, right? It's like, I think if you don't have that relationship and trust, then it just doesn't do anything for a lot of students. At the same time, like, you do want somebody who can, like, there are people who are great, like big siblings, but they don't ever actually sit with you and explain why you're getting the math problem wrong. And that might not be exactly what everybody needs. So how do you guys think about that, about making sure that, with the literacy, we were talking about how fidelity to the method is really important to actually, it's not just the materials you throw at folks. And I guess I'm sort of curious how we think about who you recruit for activities like that and how you train them and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is different, but it's similar, right? And that just like there's a science for reading, there is a science in some ways for mentoring too, and working with folks like Mass Mentors and other groups who do this work ongoing has been illuminating and really important for us to help define what mentoring should look like and to train people up who, most of our mentors work as teachers or in another capacity in schools and are used to working with students. But even still, this is a new type of relationship, and it requires professional learning and support to do it well. So we are, we're really digging in there. Bethany Allen in the strategy office is leading up this work and has extensive experience in mentoring in different capacities. So it's really, leading up this vision building for what mentoring can look like.
And also in the area of tutoring for high schoolers, Dr. McIntyre and I are looking at how do we help our English learners with people who speak their language and look like them. Through reaching out to universities and students. In my past experience, I have placed tutoring programs from the universities for especially using the international students who speak their language and can help our students academically. And also do having after school programming so that they are moving forward with their academics, or even placing an in high school tutoring program where our seniors could mentor our 7th or 8th graders, academically, and especially kids who are took those classes, mentor them or tutor our 9th graders. So we're looking at all those strategies as we think about the programming that we need to put forward for this coming fall.
Great. No, yeah, I just think I feel like I over the course of my actually middle school, high school, and college years, did various forms of helping out in BPS. When you're in middle school, you're kind of a glorified, student practically, but in high school and college to that, and I just felt like there's very wide variety in whether young people who are put into those situations are given the right kind of curriculum and training, have expectations. Think of this as like a thing that they're doing that's like nice, or like a thing that's really part of supporting the students educationally. And I just feel like within the realm of good intentions, there's a very wide bandwidth in that space. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I would just add, connected to that idea of sort of near peer tutors, is that the teacher cadet program out of our RCD office has been a great source of, sort of student mentors, and they have been trained already, right? They're focusing on working with younger people already as part of their programming. So they've been a really solid group of mentors so far.
Right. And there are various other partners that provide mentoring as we speak. And it comes to mind BAM, doing very specified work with our Black and Latinx boys, Becoming a Man. We also have partnerships with PGC, which builds the capacity for older students to go into the classroom of younger students and mentor and advise. And then our partners that are in the communities engage in the partnership work as well. Comes to mind St. Peter's and the tremendous work they're doing with the Cabo Verdean families and students, Sociedad Latina, with the wonderful work they're doing with our Latinx students. So really valuing multiple perspectives of mentoring and tutoring as it comes to our Boston Public School students and families.
Great. Well, thank you all. That's definitely my time. So I'm going to go back up to the top. Councillor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to follow up on the question I started in the last round, just curious about the impact of, or the presence of libraries in our schools, because we know the impact that they have on literacy and supporting our students. The budget before us states that we have 17, but I think there were 17 libraries in BPS, but there was a much higher number shared with us during my library hearing not too long ago. So I'm curious if we could just talk about how many libraries we have, how many librarians are funded, how many paralibrarians are funded in this budget.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And I can definitely jump in there. So I think that 17 or it should be 18 of our libraries were recently refreshed. So that might be what that number means, but in total we have 58 active libraries, which leaves us with 68 still, 68 buildings that don't currently have an active library in place. I have the data, let's see, right here around the staffing. I'll have to do a little bit of number crunching, so give me a second to do that. But most of our active libraries, of those 58, I believe about 50 of them have staffing in them, which could take the form of a full-time librarian or a library para too. And we share your sentiment that in belief that in the research out there that shows that libraries are a critical component in literacy development for students, and the superintendent has shared a bold vision for what that can look like, and has shared publicly that she's interested in providing all of our schools with libraries and looking at the ESSER funding to support that process. So what we've done is we've costed out what that would look like for each of our schools to have a collection, to have some staffing, because it's critical. We can't have libraries without someone there to support the work and support students in that space. So we have the data available, and we will definitely be looking at ESSER funding as an opportunity there. And I think in the meantime, as we're growing libraries, also continuing to work with BPL really closely to make sure that schools that don't have libraries currently have access to a BPL librarian, and that all students have their library cards. One thing we are working closely on and are nearer to the finish line on is providing every student with one card that serves as an ID and as a BPL library card as well.
Thank you very much. I'm just taking a couple of notes here. And then, so if we could just get those exact numbers, not today, but if I could just know the number of libraries we have and the staffing around librarian versus para-librarian. And then also, are there schools that don't have a standalone library, but maybe have a para-librarian or a shared librarian to support students? Just because there's such a, you recognize, and I appreciate that. I know many of you do recognize the connection between library services and literacy and student success. Just to shift gears and follow up on some of the earlier questions around high school redesign. A number of years ago, we had a hearing regarding, quote unquote, off-track youth and, really kids that we've pushed off track. And one of the challenges that we saw through that work was the the impact of small learning communities or small schools and alternative ed programs in the district, and some of the challenges that those very small school communities bring to sort of the system as a whole. Have we looked at or evaluated at all the financial impact of these small schools? And certainly I'm asking about the financial impact because this is a budget hearing. Certainly appreciate and don't want to diminish the support that they provide for students, and so the creative opportunities to engage kids in their learning and in their achievement. But if we could just talk about the financial implications of some of these much smaller schools on the district as a whole, and have we looked at or analyzed the need to maybe restructure those as part of high school redesign?
Thank you for that question. I think what we have started to have conversations with in terms of the Bill BPS process, we're going to talk more about Bill BPS this afternoon, but rather than think about do they cost more, I think there's a trade-off between school size and costs. And we want to be intentional about that design and have school size that is what we are planning to do, as opposed to school size that is sort of accidentally small. And so we've talked a lot about sort of declining enrollment. We've heard people say, well, this is an opportunity for us to have smaller, more intimate school communities. That is certainly true if you design one, as we have done in Boston, to design certain schools to be a size to serve a certain population, versus wanting to have schools that are robust and full of enrollment, and then enrollment sort of makes the decision for us. And that's sort of the change we're making in our standalone middle schools, is we can no longer offer the program we think is important in the middle grades because enrollment has declined. Part of the conversation, and we're planning to come back to school committee in the fall as sort of jointly with the heads of school, is to design and sort of be explicit in what we want our portfolio to be as a mix of schools that are both large and robust. Of course, our biggest school and sort of more best example, of course, is Latin. And if we're going to have small schools, if we're going to have that as part of our portfolio, be very clear as what the superintendent has called our foundation for quality. And that's part of this Mass Core adoption, is saying, if we're going to operate small schools and we're going to commit to Mass Core, then we're also going to commit to funding it. We're not going to leave schools to have a policy that they, a mandate that they can't fund. And so I do think we need to have these conversations as a city, because if we want every school to have robust libraries, if we want every school to have robust athletic programs or arts programs, these costs on a per school basis increase, and our cost per pupil become very wide across. So a school like Latin, which is our most resource rich, has the lowest cost per pupil. And then some of our schools, which are considered resource poor, have the highest cost per pupil. So we're spending more money and not providing the opportunities that we all expect in the city. So this was a theoretical question to, I think, a practical, theoretical answer to a practical question about have we done an evaluation of the sort of cost of small schools? But I would just summarize by saying, yes, we know that smaller schools cost us more because you are replicating services across sites. And we need to have a conversation around what's intentional versus accidental.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That's it for me this morning.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Sabi-George. Councillor Mejia? Councillor Mejia, you there? Just gonna... One second.
Sorry, Councillor Barker, I'm having some difficulties. If you give me a minute, I have to restart my Wi-Fi at home. So just give me a quick second. Or you can go to something else. I don't want to take up my time trying to get on this.
No, it's okay. Go ahead and reset your Wi-Fi. I'll ask a couple questions in the meantime.
So I do have a quick question while I figure this out. I mean, I kind of want to follow the conversation around mentoring. I'm curious what opportunities, if any, have we also explored to look at some non-traditional types of mentoring programs, like working with barbershops and hair salons, just kind of really thinking outside the box of all of the places and spaces that our children happen to be in. Are we creating opportunities to kind of engage some of these non-traditional, in many ways, are mentors for our children, right? When they're sitting in that, getting their hair cut or whatever, like, can we think of ways to kind of tap into this whole community embrace model? Well, I get myself situated here. We can answer that one.
No, thank you for that question. And we are in the very early stages of mentoring, although, to Dr. Mack's comment, there are many things happening in the city that we can build on, and many partners that we can grow mentoring programs around. And we, as we've talked about today, the need is clear. So, those are things that we would welcome your support and thoughts on. But we think that there are many, many different opportunities to provide mentoring in the community, in neighborhoods, I think one thing I will say is, in the programs that we're starting, the response has been overwhelming. And as much as we talk about how exhausted our teachers are and our staff are after an incredibly hard year in schools, it is so heartening to see how many people want to do this type of work and see the value in it. So I think that there are many, many opportunities to grow and expand, and we welcome further conversations about that.
It's actually great that Councilor Mejia mentioned the hair salons. She probably heard about the initiative that we are doing for the Mother-Daughter Conference on October 16th with about 6 universities, where we are going to be bringing from our comprehensive schools some girls and moms or grandmas, and actually we are going to pamper them and start realigning some type of mentoring. We actually are going to, as a kickoff to something we are going to be doing in March for International Women's Conference. And so we are planning this in October 16 is going to be online, where we're bringing in Maggie's from East Boston, the hair salon there that we certainly going to partner with. And then we are thinking who else will be bringing in the future that is going to be actually live where we are, because when I go there, it's great, just and talking to the hairdressers there and about their children and guiding them about the possibility of college, and some kids have dropped out. Is certainly a way that we need to capture more community and engage. But I do agree, Councilor Mejia, and not just for the girls, but also we planning what will we do for boys.
Yep.
Right. And if I could just add 2 other quick.
Oh no, y'all not gonna keep adding to my little time now.
Okay, all right, you keep going then.
Go ahead, because it's you, Dr. McIntyre. Go on ahead.
No, I just wanted to say we have a hub school model that we're initiating, which brings in all of the community and equity roundtables. 2 wonderfully rich opportunities to address your concern.
Thank you. I knew that would be the case. So then let me just get into some of my hard-hitting questions here. I gave you a little soft one just to line you up, but here comes the hard balls, okay? In terms of graduation rates, we're seeing some of the lowest graduation rates in Boston Day and Evening Academy and BATA. What are we doing to ensure that adults who are going through the BPS system are retained and prepared to graduate as well? I mean, we've been doing a lot of work with BATA, and we work with the students who are considered in alternative high schools. But can you just talk to me a little bit about the graduation rates with some of our harder high need schools?
So let me start by saying the multiple pathways that we're engaging as policy relevant to the Mass Core is going to be very instrumental in addressing some of those challenges and growing the graduation rate. In addition to the multiple pathways, we are working with competency determination at this point. So students are being granted MCAS competency determination based on class performances and not necessarily the MCAS assessment. And finally, I will add that our alternative programs are becoming very skilled in MCAS alternative opportunities for our students that would also increase the graduation rate.
Can you talk to me specifically around BATA and Boston Evening Academy? Just kind of like, because I know that those two schools have a very low graduation rate. And I also know that BATA works with a lot of students who are who have had interrupted education, who are a little bit older, who are immigrants, many who are undocumented. And so the desire and the will is there to graduate, but they're experiencing a lot of hardships on that journey towards that. And so I would like to get some more depth around that. And before I see the gavel, I also want to know that the second question that I have is, what are we doing to make sure that every school has access to arts and music education, and that those programs reflect the diversity of backgrounds in our students? And those are the two questions that I want to make sure we get to.
Okay, so I want to talk about BATA and BDA in terms of the specialized populations that both schools serve. And in BDEA, the way in which they engage their program is almost like it's a fifth-year program for their students. They don't really have the expectation of students matriculating in the time. Many of the students that arrive there are behind, they're over age, and they need time not only to address their social emotional wellness, but their academics. And they use competency-based, they're using vocational models, and they're really beginning to diversify their opportunities to engage students. But they are some of the most vulnerable students that we serve in the community. And as far as BATA, we're connecting BATA to our adult central high school. So any of the work that cannot be done in the time frame that is given to BATA for the students can carry on to Central Adult Academy. And just really trying to meet their needs holistically, using multi-tiered systems of supports and giving each student what he or she needs to help them get to proficiency.
Yeah, I think
one more thing we have.
No, the gavel is up, and I don't want to hear. I would like the answer to the other question in terms of what are we doing around arts and music education. I really want to get to that because I think that that's how my time usually gets eaten up. So if someone could just address that question, please. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Councilor Bach. I see the gavel.
Tony,
we want to get that question in.
Sure. Well, we've increased arts specifically big time in the pre-K to 8 space. It's really the high school level that we're focusing in on now. We're going to be studying that over this year on where the gaps are. But something I didn't bring up earlier is that we have over 60 arts partners in the city, either offering arts instruction along with a teacher or directly to fill in the gaps in everything from Hyde Square Task Force to our friends at Zoomix. And additionally, we rely on our nonprofit partners and cultural organizations to help provide professional development for our teachers so that it can be a more multicultural curriculum that represents our students.
And I just want to add, Councilor Mejia, this is exactly why we just passed the mass core policy that we've been talking about several times to really create standards across the district at the high school level. And part of this first year is really understanding where are the gaps, right, in art and music and athletics, right? And there's that commitment that Mr. Cooter spoke about, Chief Cooter spoke about, around the $10 million to make sure that we are funding those positions as part of the implementation of this policy.
Thank you. And before I get put on mute, I am done for now. Thank you so very much for all your hard work. Looking forward to round 3 if it exists.
Hopefully we're gonna wrap up shortly, but Councilor Edwards is up next.
Thank you. I wanted to go to some of the outdoor space and I guess infrastructure provided for our young folks. I can speak to some of the playgrounds, for example, the O'Donnell in East Boston, which is in desperate need of infrastructure and investment. And if someone could speak to me about how we are making sure that our playground space and places where our kids gather, and I think that's also part of their education, is being invested in. And I also wanted to know where there may not be points for the budget. How are you leveraging private dollars to at least pay for those things? and that infrastructure? What's your public-private gatherings together? I did want to give a shout out to ZoomX and the increase in art, especially having a band teacher. It's incredible. So thank you so much for that. But if you could speak to me about the play space, the joy space, and BPS's, I don't know, plan to make sure that they're all functioning. I know we had a kid get injured on a bridge or something. So if you can speak to that. And then I also wanted to speak to what are we doing in terms of a trade school at we're planning for with Suffolk Downs in partnership. There's an infusion of cash and training and learning, and wondering if BPS is looking to partner.
I can take the first question about our investments in outdoor learning spaces. In our capital budget, there's 2 programs related to our playgrounds. The first is a outdoor space maintenance program. One of the things that we need to do a better job of across the board is having a preventative maintenance schedule for all of our assets, including schoolyards. And you mentioned the playground at the O'Donnell and the sort of failed upkeep with that as an issue that we're trying to address with this. The second is an investment in the schoolyard initiative. It's been a long program to upgrade the schoolyards, and that's not just, you know, the repair program is resurfacing and painting and maintaining our existing structures. The schoolyards initiative is meant to do major upgrades. The superintendent has also tasked the team with developing what we're sort of dubbing right now the 21st century exterior improvements, which is we have a number of disparate programs to upgrade signage or upgrade walkways or resurface playgrounds. What she wants us to think about is how do we go in and do a major refresh or major upgrade to the experience outside of the school buildings, so that you basically do all the programs at once, so that the students really do see a different, welcoming and safer environment. And that is part of our plans and program. I don't have a lot of details in terms of how we're leveraging external funding. I know, so I'll have to get back to you in terms of that portion of the question.
Oh, so just
sorry, Councilor Edwards, I did just want to say we do also have a hearing next week that's focused on partnerships. So I think we can also ask the team to come with more info on that then.
Okay, thank you. So then just let's go specifically to the O'Donnell. Is there a commitment to make sure that there are funds to fix the playground and play space at the O'Donnell?
So I'm going to need a moment to just look within the capital budget around if the O'Donnell's part of the project. I don't have information on that off the top of my head.
I'll tell you what I'm trying to do as a city councilor. I'm now looking to apply for CPA funds. I'm now trying to talk to developers in East Boston. So I'm advocating for that open space, and I just want BPS to be as well. For all of the playground spaces, I think it's a matter of equity. It's a matter of pride when you come in and whether you see the basketball hoop is there or if it's just a blank space. It's a matter of safety. Obviously, again, a kid fell through the, I think it was the bridge. And it's just a source of also gathering in a place where you feel that your, I don't know, physical sense, your ability to have joy with your friends on. And the other thing too is, provided that they're not gated up, that's oftentimes where people play too when school isn't in session. So I think it's an investment that I'm looking specifically at and having some real commitments, not just for safety, but for joy in East Boston at all of my elementary schools. I think, how much more time do I have, Councilor Bach? I wanted to go.
You've got another couple of minutes. And okay. I will say that also the afternoon capital hearing would also be an appropriate time for Nate to come back with the answer on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that would be helpful. And then, so I did want to, despite the criticisms, I did want to say thank you for the continuing in the movement towards streamlining our schools in East Boston and making sure that we had the K-6s and the second building, I believe, for the Otis moving. I don't know if there's been a change in that time schedule. but I still am grateful for 7 to 12 in Charlestown and 7 to 12 in East Boston. If you could speak to that timeline, I think it's a huge win for us.
Yeah, so the Charlestown High School will be adding 7th and 8th grade this fall, and coinciding with the Edwards School closing at the end of this year. And East Boston will start in 7th grade also next fall. So we are very excited about the expansion of those two 7 to 12s, which does complete the K-6 pathway for East Boston. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because it is, the superintendent accelerated the timeline of that when she came in, and I think it's exciting for us to start to see greater retention in our elementary schools in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, because families have that predictable pathway, which they've been asking for.
No, and what we've seen, at least at the Otis and other schools, is how active are the McKay, how active our parents are, our immigrant parents especially. So your coordinators have been very helpful. I want to give a shout out to Beatrice over at the Curtis, Guild. All of them have done amazing jobs of really integrating and gathering and pulling and moving parents. And so this actually only enhances that, because instead of then there be a drop off, a lot of the parents have found it hard to follow them over to the Edwards and Charlestown or other schools. Now I'm seeing that you're going to only continue to increase that parental involvement into streamlining as they go up. So I'm excited, and on behalf of a lot of those parents, it's a really good moment for us. I know East Boston walks more than any other school area, any other district in East Boston. We walk to school more than anybody else. And I don't know if it's just our island mentality or what, but they tend to prefer to stay in East Boston. So I just want to say thank you for hearing us and speeding up that timeline. I can't wait I don't know if there's going to be a grand opening. I think they're doing a separate wing over at East Boston High School and building that out. Do you know physically what they're trying to do, or what the physical timeline is and build outs look like?
I know that they're in the process now. They do want to have that sort of separate space for 7th and 8th graders, so they can create kind of that academy type feel. I haven't seen the specific plans recently, but I can follow up with the timeline on construction. I know it's a sort of multi-phased process for getting those schools ready.
But this fall, though, the 7th graders will be going. Okay.
This fall they'll be enrolled, and the work is beginning this summer as well. So this is all work that is active and underway. It may not all be complete this fall.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to. I won't need a third round, but I would in the next hearing on the Capitol. You mentioned Councilor Bach, where we can hear a little bit more about. Okay.
Great. Yes, no, that sounds good. And I have a couple more questions, but before I go to myself, I'm going to let the public, we have 3 members of the public who have waited for this whole hearing to testify, and I really want to make sure we get them in. And since we're closing in on our time, I'm going to quickly let them testify. And so I will, I'll just start with Barry. Barry Weiner, you have the floor.
All righty, thanks. I just wanted to thank everyone that backed Ed Coppinger's bill and signed off on the resolution. So my name's Barry Weiner. I've been taking care of my kids alone over 20 years. I have 3 boys, 2 twins that are disabled that go to Perkins School for the Blind. They are supposed to graduate next year, but due to the pandemic, my children and others like them lost an entire school year that needs to be made up. Zooms were attempted, but for students like mine, that did nothing as far as learning goes. My house could not be set up like a school with all the stuff that's needed for my boys to learn. You know, not to mention I'm a single dad, so I was trying to navigate both children at the same time. So that's just impossible. Imagine a wheelchair-bound child, you know, unable to get any physical therapy for how many months? Way too many. So they lost the everyday, every week consistency that they require to learn. You know, there were too many gaps, too many stoppages, and just not enough in-person learning. You know, their school officially closed March 13th last year. They just went back full-time about 5 weeks ago. Now, my guys were also part-time residential students, and they have been unable to access that for over 14 months. That's where they could work on daily living school skills, and so many other things. Children like mine are slow learners in ideal conditions. There's just no way what was provided is acceptable in any way, shape, or form, period. I'm a dad, and all I want is the best for my children and other children's, like them. So my opinion is they deserve the opportunities that they were denied. They're not just numbers. These are human beings, people. Let's not lose sight of that. So for once, I would just like the right thing to be done because it's the right thing to be done. These kids need what they lost, and they deserve what was lost. So let's give them what they lost. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weiner. Really appreciate you sharing that testimony. Next up, we've got, one second, Lynn Waskelis. Lynn, you're up. Lynn. All right, I've lost Lynn for a second, so I'm going to go to Bernadette. Bernadette O'Halloran. Bernadette, you have to unmute if you want to testify. Oh, yes, I see your hand, Lynn. You're in, so you can testify now if you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lynn Waskelis. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak about an extra year of school for students with complex disabilities that are aging out of school as a remedy for the education loss during the pandemic. Thanks to my counselor, O'Malley, and to Counselor Flynn for highlighting the educational losses faced by this population of vulnerable students. I'm a parent of a 20-year-old daughter who also attends the Perkins School. She's due to graduate in 2022. She has complex disabilities, including cortical vision impairment, intellectual disability, a genetic syndrome, and a severe communication disability, which means she speaks with a communication device like this.
I want to go to Mo.
So learning remotely was, a pretty near impossible challenge. The pandemic resulted in more than a year of severe loss of in-person education and in-person social emotional development, and the kind of instruction that my daughter needs to learn, which is full-time, in-person, and consistent. Remote learning was extremely fatiguing for her eyes and brain. Communicating with her device was, extremely difficult, if not impossible. And the extreme isolation of the pandemic took its toll. We recognize that my daughter and everyone did their best under these circumstances, but she did regress emotionally due to the challenges she faced, her isolation, and her confusion around the pandemic. And no one can really truly measure what was lost by my daughter and other students like her. These are students who can't really be assessed using standardized tests or assessments. And for these reasons that we're requesting an additional year of school for our daughter and students like her. These are the students who have to work so hard to learn and make progress. Students who were some of the most negatively impacted by remote learning and the isolating circumstances of the pandemic. This extra year will allow her and them to recover some of what was lost and better prepare them for the transition to adult life. Thank you for considering these complex disabled students that are nearing graduation in the upcoming budget. And thank you also for your support of the HD 4120 bill.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Lynn, for your testimony. I'm gonna go one more time to see if Bernadette is ready to testify.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your time and all your efforts. We're very, very grateful. And I want to thank Representative Carver for filing this HD 4120 bill for the special needs students and because they suffer terribly. To reinforce everything Barry Weiner and Lynn just stated, exactly the same thing. They have a very hard time learning. I'm the sole guardian, a senior citizen for a 21-year-old young man. He's legally blind, autistic. He suffers ADD, ADHD, and PDD. And it's just learning alone is a huge challenge for him. He tries the best he can and really tries to apply himself as well as possible. He needs a lot of help and needs a lot of in-person teaching, etc. In addition to that, like Barry said, they lost a lot of the services. There was no occupational speech or physical therapy during this entire time, a huge loss for all these students. They have enough on their plate, really, and we were very hopeful that when the age out of 22, that's the age we understand, but that can be amended. It's not impossible. We'll be very, very grateful if they get one more year at school. This will be the class of 22, I understand that. And the focus is this immediate year, obviously. We understand all that. We would be most grateful if they truly consider this. And again, our thanks to Representative Clevenger and City Councilors Flaherty and Flynn for the resolution that Flynn put together, and from Councilor Flaherty for his letter to the Joint Committee on Education, and the one that was sent to the Rules Committee. So thank you everyone for your attention. We're very grateful.
Great. Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you so much for your testimony, and to all of you for waiting so patiently throughout the hearing, and for all you do on behalf of your students. All right. I am mindful that I and others on this call all have an appointment at 2 o'clock for another hearing. So I will just ask one more. Well, my comment will just be that in a different world in which we didn't have so many counselors on this hearing, I would have spent some more time talking to you all about the history curriculum and where we are. Because as a historian on the council, I feel like that's part of my responsibility. And I will say that one of the reasons why I think it's so great that we're moving towards Mass Core is that I think it's going to improve the chances, at least I understand it to improve the chances, that our students are going to really be exposed to serious history instruction, which I think is important for content and context, but also for all the kind of critical thinking and writing skills that students need as well. So I'm just saying that I would love to get deep in the weeds in those curricular conversations, but we'll do it another time. I did want to circle back because we sort of cut off, it was in Councilor Mejia's first round of questions, but I did want to circle back to the literacy piece because I appreciated the detailed briefing and that we have a real plan. It's really good to hear that we have a real plan because those numbers that are attached as in an appendix to the deck, I mean, just the idea that we've got such low literacy rates amongst our Black and Latinx students, like the second grade oral reading expectations numbers, these, it's, I just think that literacy is one of those things where it's not like there's literacy and then there's all these other subjects you could excel in. It's like if we don't get the literacy piece right, then students are struggling and having to try to fake it through every other kind of lesson. And I just think there's nothing that makes students feel more quickly like they must just not be smart than just the fact that like the literacy, we haven't gotten over the literacy hump. And obviously the racial gaps here are really concerning, but all the numbers are not as high as they should be. So I guess I saw that sort of multi-year plan. I'm sort of curious what success looks like. Curious, I heard your note, Jason, I think about the fidelity, right? Like, it's not just that we get everybody great, my first readers, it's that somebody knows how to work with them. So what's our experience of success getting instructors to operate that way? Because do you think there's a little bit of a tendency, just it's human nature, to like give a bunch of kids books and then let them be reading them? So I don't know. I would love to hear more about that because I think that it's the one thing that you guys presented on that we haven't really talked about much here, but it's clearly like a pretty major issue in the district.
Thank you so much for that question. It's something we could talk about for a long time too. And I know Jason has many thoughts he'd like to share. I'll just start by saying just a bit more about this transition in the way that we're thinking about literacy, which you just alluded to. For many years, the district has used a balanced literacy approach, which sounds great, and it has some strong components to it. But over time, we have learned in the education field that this is not the right way to do things. And very, at a very high level, what we're doing is sort of diagnosing where students reading, and sort of gradually giving them a bit more challenging books, right, to hopefully close that gap to reach grade level text. And what we've found, and what the broader education and literacy community has found, is that when you take that approach, students don't have access to the language that they need, the beautiful, complex language of grade level text that they should have all along. And they also miss out on many of the foundational skills, the phonics, just the sounds that they should be sort of bathed in and exposed to all along. And so that incremental approach rarely gets kids where they need to be. And when we talk about the science of reading and making that change and that shift in the district, we're talking about starting instead with grade level text, beautiful, complex, authentic texts that matter to kids. And for students who aren't able to read those books yet, that we build in scaffolds to support them and teach teachers ways to chunk the text, to break it down into one page right now. And we're really going to explore the sentence structure and really understand, but still stay focused in the complexity of the text that they should see. And through this approach, we can move students much faster to being grade level readers and writers and speakers. But this is a huge mindset shift for teachers. And we're not the only place that's dealing with this across the country. People are talking about this change. We are a bit behind in it, though, I will say that most major districts have made this shift already. And we're thrilled that we're finally getting to this place. And I think, as I said, we started with our transformation schools, which was, there was a push at first, right? And there was a lot of pushback around making this shift in reading, and it's too hard, right? But our teachers and our leaders have come along. And I would say that beyond our transformation schools, as I mentioned before, we have many schools that have said, we want to do this too. We understand this is the right thing to do. So we're trying to move people through professional learning and to provide the coaching needed to get everyone on board as fast as possible with this different approach. And Jason can speak more to this, but this has been a very collaborative process. I just want to finish with, between the academics department, early childhood, special education, OEL, opportunity gap office. So we're all saying the same thing, which I think is also incredibly critical and has not happened during my time in the district before. And it starts with early childhood, and Jason and his team have done an incredible job of making the shifts that are needed to provide our youngest students with the type of literacy experiences they need, and our teachers with the type of professional learning and coaching that they need.
Actually, I think you said everything I would have wanted to say much better. So the only thing I would just add is that we are going to be collecting data along the way. So you can ask for data by student type, using both the MAP data and then the fidelity data, like who's actually using curriculum, which schools are signed up, and you can monitor the change over time. So that would be the only thing I would add, is this is really one classroom at a time, one teacher at a time, students experiencing a very different early childhood curriculum. And again, it started with the work in preschool, but as some of you don't know, it's like we've rewritten the curriculum and continue to rewrite the curriculum so that it's matching the science of reading and the culturally responsive teaching that we need in the district. And we're doing it really with an equity lens. So the collaboration is amazing, but it is, I would say about a third of the students right now are experiencing that kind of high fidelity pre-K to K to first to second grade experience. And so that this is a lot of work that's going to need to be monitored and evaluated. And then what's going to be like third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then how does it track its way across and up throughout the district? So, this is the beginning of a process of monitoring that I don't think we've had before that focuses on instruction. So I don't know if that answered.
I'm sorry, Kristen. I would only add to Councilor Mejia's question before, is that this is a K-12 initiative. And one thing that we're also doing very differently is working with our ELA teachers first. We have to get to everybody, but focusing on our English teachers and dual language, Spanish teachers too, in high schools, to also support them in understanding how students learn to read, especially students in the high school range, right, who are struggling readers or non-readers, which again is not something that you're typically taught as you enter a role as a high school teacher. So this has also been an important change for us, and one that we would love to work with Councilor Mejia on as you're thinking about adult literacy, because I think we've stumbled on something really important here, and not stumbling, it's very intentional, but I think that a next piece here is to think about the connection to adult literacy as well. So we would welcome an opportunity to work on that.
That's great. And yeah, it would be great to think about what's the partnership with BPL there and how are we thinking about, because yeah, if somebody's, I mean, what you're explaining makes a lot of sense to me in sort of, if I want to be reading at a fourth grade reading level, better to get me working on reading one page of a fourth grade reader than have me read 100 pages of a first grade reader, right? Because it's like, then I'm just kind of like stalling out. Plus I feel like I'm not getting the material that my friends are getting.
Exactly.
No. Yeah, no, but that, it does seem like that takes a real reorientation. So I'm really glad to hear that you're tracking it. And I just think that's something, I guess I would just say that's something that I hope that like as the district continues to come to the council and stuff, that like, that giving us updates on where are we with that and where are we with outcomes on that. It's just really important. I think in a weird way, the internet world has also really made literacy in a funny way really essential. We actually all read a lot more. People say, oh, we're not reading books, etc. But actually the amount of text that people are consuming in order to kind of navigate things there's a lot. So okay, well that's great. And then I had one more question, which is just, and this might be a Nate question. I'm sorry, I've blanked on who it was who presented this sort of flow chart. But the staff chart, but can I just get a refresher on which of this is the Division of Schools header, HTSC? That would be Corey. That was Corey. Is Corey still here?
Corey.
Or have we lost him? Oh no, Corey's here. Corey? I think you said that there was somebody new who was going to be focusing on kind of the supports for the students in this hard year, but I missed exactly which role that was in this chart.
Yep. So we're looking at adding regional academic directors so that we can add a little bit more muscle as we think about helping our school leaders and their instructional leadership teams really focus on instruction and really bring that data piece to the conversation. Because I think right now we're kind of left to our own narratives. And so we need to do a much better job of monitoring what's happening real time so that we can make adjustments on the fly.
Yeah, totally. So those three regional academic directors are all new positions?
The regional academic director position will be a new temporary position.
Okay. And then what else on this chart that I'm looking at are new positions?
The other one is the assistant superintendent of network development. And so what I've seen time and time again over 25 years is you keep adding more people to the equation, but you don't have the level of coherence and focus that you need. And you don't have the level of intention that's necessary to make sure that those people work together, that they understand each other's working styles and strengths, and create the conditions where you can leverage the best of what each individual person brings to the table. And what I like to say frequently is often we work as a group, meaning that we're disconnected and working in our own individual lanes. And what we need to do is to move towards working as a team where we have a level of interdependence to each other. My success is connected to your success. And that doesn't just organically happen. It takes intention, and you can bring in specific tools that increase the likelihood that you'll get that level of interdependence that you need.
Yeah, I mean, so I said at the last hearing, which I think you weren't at, that, I mean, my biggest concern about us going into September is that we've actually added a ton of great support for our students, but that everyone is kind of like, the ball falls between the outfielders. You're like, how could we miss it? There are 5 outfielders now, right? But it's like, actually, sometimes when there's 5 outfielders, everybody thinks, you know, the other person's got it. So it's definitely a deep concern of mine. And if I always think with the council, we want to scrutinize new central office positions. You know, so it sounds like the academic directors are temporary. Is that right? And then is this network person temporary, or is that a new permanent role?
I see that as temporary as well, only a part of the recovery work that we need to do. And I think once you create the conditions and you bring in some tools, an example would be like the DISC profile. There's another great tool called the Intercultural Development Inventory. So I think we really just need to build the system, but I don't see a need for these long-term at all.
So this assistant superintendent of network development, I'm sympathetic to turning something into a team, but who are they turning into a team? Like, who are is this somebody who's working with other people in central office? Is this somebody who's worrying about making our school site staffs more team-like, or is that more the academic directors? Like, who are they actually trying to organize?
Good question. So what we're trying to do is to coordinate the entire district office. So I'll give you kind of an example. So you have the school superintendent, you'll have a regional academic director, we have our supervisors of attendance, we have our hub school strategy that we're trying to move forward. We have data inquiry facilitators, you have your budget finance people. So school leaders get support from a number of different places in the district office. So this person is really about how do you coordinate all of those people around the school superintendent. So when I was a principal supervisor for 9 years, I had a team of people who supported me in the schools that were in my portfolio. And I was like totally responsible for coordinating all of these people and keeping up with the tons of other things I had to do. So this person's focus is really about supporting the school superintendents to organize and align the team of people who support them across the district office around their portfolio of schools. So it's direct support to the school superintendent with a focus on coordinating all of the other offices who also provide support to school leaders and school staff.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Harris, do you have job descriptions for these 2 jobs, the regional academic director and this assistant superintendent?
Yes.
Would you mind sharing those with my committee, just so we can get I think that I totally see, like I said, the need for coordination in this moment. And in fact, you know, I'm glad to hear about it. I think we always worry. I mean, central office, this is true. I also was in the world of universities for a while. Like, administrative jobs tend to increase and then never disappear. And sometimes, you know, the question of sort of how we're being intentional about that long term can suffer. So I just think it would be helpful for the council to have those job descriptions if adding these roles is part of what we're funding in the budget.
Can do.
All right. Well, thank you. And it's 1:24. I think all of my colleagues have waived 3rd round questions. I'm gonna hope that that's the case. And we've already taken our public testimony. So I think without further ado, just before I adjourn, I'll just say to the BPS team that in light of this running long, I will start the next one 10 minutes after the hour. So I'll start at 2:10, so people can grab something to eat and such. So Thank you all. And with that, this hearing of the City Council's, sorry, is someone going to say something? No, okay. With that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.